Our story unfolds in Panem after the dark days. In the years following the dark days, the capital rebuilt its authority over a ruined North American nation and 12 dependent districts. Beneath new roads, railways, and broadcast towers, the defeated population was organized into mines, farms, factories, and annual ceremonies designed to keep the Civil War present in everyday life. Panem stands in the capital during the first winter after the dark days, while smoke still rises from the broken districts beyond the mountains. You are standing beneath a pale morning sky, where the old avenues have been cleared of rubble and marked with fresh white lines. Around you, surveyors move between shattered buildings, carrying rolls of paper, iron rulers, and maps whose borders are still being drawn. The Civil War has ended, though its silence feels unfinished. Behind the workers, walls lean into one another, bridges have fallen into black water, and railway tracks disappear beneath ash. Ahead, the capital begins to take shape as an idea before it becomes a city, a center placed carefully at the heart of a wounded land. The name Panem is chosen with the old Latin phrase Panem et circenses in mind, commonly translated as bread and circuses. It carries the memory of an empire that fed its people and entertained them while power remained elsewhere, quiet and secure. In this new country, the phrase becomes less a quotation than a design. Food will move along guarded routes. Ceremonies will gather the eyes of millions. The capital will offer brightness, spectacle, and order, while the districts provide the labor that allows such brightness to continue. You hear hammers striking stone along the avenue, each blow softened by the wet air. Fine snow gathers in the hollows between paving slabs, then melts beneath the boots of officials inspecting the new foundations. The capital's surviving towers catch the weak daylight and return it in thin silver reflections. Electric lamps burn beneath archways even at noon, throwing an artificial glow across polished stone. Their light is steady and colorless, without the flicker of candles or the uneven warmth of oil. At the edge of the square, a damaged railway station has been repaired enough for freight to pass through. The rails shine with rain, and the smell of hot metal lingers beneath the roof. Far away, a train gives a long, low signal before beginning its journey inward. Coal, grain, timber, fish, machinery, and finished goods will travel towards the capital, each carriage carrying the wealth of a district and the evidence of its obedience. The sound fades slowly, as though the train is drawing the whole country behind it. The new state is assembled from ruins, railways, and administrative maps. Engineers restore bridges because armies once crossed them, while officials preserve the routes because commerce will now use the same paths. The capital governs 12 districts in the period remembered by the original trilogy, placing each within a system of production that leaves little room for independence. The districts are not equal provinces gathered under a common flag. They are separate instruments, tuned to different tasks, and held together by the authority of the capital. You move outward from the ordered avenues, following the railway as it leaves the city and passes beneath hills darkened by winter. The capital grows smaller behind you, but its influence travels beside the track in telegraph wires, patrol stations, and sealed instructions. Every few miles, watchtowers rise above the embankment, their windows black against the snow. Soldiers stand beneath them with rifles resting against their shoulders. The land appears open, yet every road seems to lead through a place where someone is counting. District 12 lies far to the west, in the Appalachian region of the former United States. There, coal mining has become the district's defining labor, carried out below steep hills and long ridges where forests thin around the settlements. You enter the town at dawn, while the roofs are still dark and the chimneys release narrow threads of smoke. Miners walk towards the shafts in heavy clothing, their lamps moving like small stars through the cold. Coal dust settles on windowsills, door frames, and the edges of sleeping rooms. The dust is soft at first, almost like flour, though it stains the fingers and gathers in the lines of the skin. It drifts through cracks around the windows and rests on folded blankets. Outside, carts grind over frozen ground, carrying black loads towards the railhead. The air tastes of soot and iron. Somewhere below, machinery turns in the darkness, steady and patient, while above ground, the metallic hum of electric fences marks the boundary between the settlement and the surrounding hills. District 12 is only one part of Panem's arrangement. In another direction, broad agricultural districts stretch beneath open skies, producing grain, fruit, vegetables, and livestock for the capital and other communities. Fields are measured, planted, and harvested according to schedules written elsewhere. You see long rows of pale stubble beneath the autumn light, barns painted in practical colors, and storehouses guarded by men carrying lists of quantities and destinations. The fields hold their own quiet sounds. Dry stalks scrape against one another in the wind, and distant engines pass along narrow service roads. In the evenings, the scent of earth remains beneath the sharper smell of fuel. Frost forms along the furrows and shines briefly before sunrise. Beyond the farm buildings, freight trains wait with their doors closed, ready to carry sacks of grain towards the capital. Their couplings knock together in the cold, a small metallic rhythm repeated across the countryside. Along the coast, fishing districts bring a different kind of abundance into the national system. You stand beside dark water where boats return beneath a sky the color of pewter. Nets hang from wooden frames, dripping steadily onto the boards. Fish lie packed in ice, their scales reflecting the lamps swinging above the harbor. The people here work with tide tables, rope, salt, and weather, reading the sea with the same care that miners give to the seams beneath the earth. The harbor smells of brine, tar, and wet timber. Wind enters every gap in the walls and presses cold fingers against your face. Ropes creak against bollards, while chains slide across the deck of a returning boat. Beyond the breakwater, the sea rises and falls without regard for borders or laws. Yet even here, the capital's authority is present in stamped crates, inspected catches, and schedules determining which boat may leave and which cargo must remain. Forestry districts occupy colder regions, where tall trees cover the slopes and timber becomes another form of national currency. You walk beneath dark branches while snow settles softly on the needles overhead. Axes sound from a distant clearing, measured and unhurried. Logs move down rivers or along temporary railways, then continue towards the capital. The forest appears ancient and ungoverned, though paths have been numbered, cutting areas assigned, and patrols know where every road begins. The timber carries the smell of resin and rain. Sawdust gathers in pale heaps beside the mills, and the floorboards tremble whenever a blade passes through fresh wood. In the quiet between machines, you hear water running beneath thin ice. Pine smoke drifts from workers' houses, blending with the sharper scent of oil. At dusk, lamps appear one by one along the road, each small light surrounded by blue darkness and falling snow. Other districts are devoted to electronics, transportation, and luxury production. In workshops filled with controlled light, delicate components are assembled beneath magnifying lenses and humming instruments. In transport yards, engines are repaired, carriages loaded, and timetables adjusted so that Panem's movement remains continuous. In districts devoted to luxury, skilled hands shape fabrics, jewelry, furnishings, and objects intended for people who have never needed to ask how they were made. The factories are warmer than the streets, though the warmth belongs to the machinery rather than the people. Belts turn overhead, needles rise and fall, and polished tools rest in exact rows. Glass screens cast blue light across tired faces. In the transport yards, brakes release with a sigh, followed by the heavy clank of freight doors. In luxury workshops, silk slides over tables and small stones catch beneath lamps. Every district has its own texture, but all send their finest work along the same distant railway. The capital stands at the center of this arrangement, technologically advanced and materially wealthy compared with the districts that sustain it. Its buildings rise in bright plains of glass, metal, and polished stone. Roads are wide enough for processions, and public rooms are lit with a clarity that makes shadow seem unnecessary. The city possesses medicines, machines, fabrics, vehicles, and foods that rarely reach communities beyond its borders. You pass through a capital market where fruit appears in every season. Glass cases hold bright pastries, preserved meats, and small dishes arranged with unnecessary precision. Water runs continuously through narrow channels beside the pavement, clear and warm despite the winter. The stones beneath your feet are smooth from years of cleaning. Above you, electric signs glow in soft colors, and the air carries perfume, hot sugar, polished leather, and rain. Status is displayed upon the body as openly as in the buildings. Citizens of the capital commonly use elaborate clothing, cosmetics, and bodily modification to distinguish themselves from one another and from the districts. Hair may be dyed vivid shades, skin altered with pigments or patterns, and faces shaped according to fashions that change with the season. Clothing can be layered, embroidered, feathered, jeweled, or cut into forms with no practical purpose. You see velvet sleeves brushing against painted walls and bright powder resting on the cheeks of passing citizens. Perfume follows them through the corridors in gentle clouds. Shoes click over stone, their soles thin and carefully made. Beneath the electric lights, modified skin reflects with a strange smoothness, while ornaments tremble at the ears and throat. Nothing is accidental in this city. Even extravagance becomes a language, telling you who belongs near the center. Beyond the capital, the districts remain connected by roads and rails, but that connection does not create equality. Each district performs an unequal economic function, and the boundaries between those functions become part of the political order. Coal is needed for power and heating. Agriculture fills storehouses. Fishing provides food. Forestry supplies materials. Electronics, transport, and luxury production serve the systems and comforts of the capital. You watch freight trains gather at a junction beneath a grey afternoon sky. One carries coal from District 12, its sides powdered black. Another bears sealed crates from the agricultural district. A third is filled with timber, while smaller wagons hold fish packed in salt and ice. The trains wait beneath signal lamps changing from red to green. When they begin to move, the tracks sing faintly under their weight, and the distant freight lines seem to converge upon one destination. The capital's authority is presented as the consequence of victory in the civil war known as the Dark Days. Before the settlement, the districts had rebelled against the central government, and the fighting damaged cities, industries, roads, and entire communities. The capital's version of history describes the rebellion as a threat to civilization itself. Its victory is therefore remembered not only as military success, but as the restoration of order after a time of danger. You stand inside an archive where the war has been reduced to documents. Maps show advancing lines in red and retreating lines in black. Typed reports describe shortages, sabotage, raids, and surrendered positions. Names appear in columns, followed by dates and locations. The paper is dry beneath your fingertips, and dust lies in the corners of the shelves. Outside, the capital continues to shine, while inside the archive the dark days remain fixed in ink. The settlement that ends the rebellion is called the Treaty of Treason. Its name places blame upon the districts and gives the peace agreement the character of a verdict. The treaty ends the rebellion and establishes the post-war settlement remembered by Panem. It does not simply close the fighting. It converts military victory into a calendar of obligations, preserving the capital's power through rules repeated each year. You find the treaty's words copied into official ledgers, displayed in schools, and engraved upon government buildings. The pages are bordered with heavy black lines, as though the paper itself were mourning. Clerks turn them carefully beneath shaded lamps. In the stillness of the record rooms, you hear the scratch of pens, the faint ticking of a clock, and the low vibration of electricity in the walls. Among the treaty's terms is a continuing reminder of the district's defeat. Each district is required to provide 2 young people as tributes every year. Their names are chosen during a public ceremony called the Reaping. The ceremony becomes an obligation placed upon every calendar, school, and household. The rebellion is not allowed to become distant history. Its memory is renewed through the bodies of children. You stand in a district square before sunrise, where rows of wooden barriers have been placed around a raised platform. The air is damp, and the ground holds the marks of many boots. Guards move quietly along the edges, checking entrances and watching the houses beyond. Families gather in their best available clothing, though the colors are muted and the fabric often repaired. No one speaks above a murmur. The reaping is designed as ceremony, but its meaning is punishment. Each district must offer 1 young woman and 1 young man, and the selection is made before the assembled population. The names are written on slips, placed in glass bowls, and watched by a crowd that cannot look away. The clear bowl reflects the morning light. The paper inside shifts whenever the official's hand moves near it. You hear the soft rustle of paper slips inside the glass bowl, almost delicate, like dry leaves beneath a door. A microphone waits on the platform, its metal surface cold and bright. Behind the speaker, the seal of Panem hangs against dark cloth. Children stand in separate groups, their faces pale beneath the open sky, while parents remain behind the barriers with their hands folded tightly. The names are read aloud, and the chosen tributes are brought forward. Their district becomes a stage, though the stage is a square of ordinary pavement surrounded by houses, shops, and winter trees. The capital's cameras record every movement. The public ceremony carries the authority of law, but also the shape of theater, because punishment must be seen to be complete. The games are broadcast throughout Panem, making punishment a shared national spectacle. Every district is required to watch the tributes enter the arena, survive its dangers, and fight beneath the capital's gaze. The broadcast travels through homes, schools, workshops, guard stations, and public halls. The same images reach miners in District 12, fishermen by the coast, farmers in the fields, and wealthy citizens beneath the capital's bright lights. In District 12, the broadcast screen glows against a wall darkened by coal smoke. The room is close and cold, with damp coats hanging near the door. Outside, coal dust settles again on the windowsill, fine and black beneath the frame. A kettle warms slowly on the stove. Voices from the screen continue through the house, polished and distant, while the metallic hum of the electric fence rises and falls beyond the town. In the capital, the same broadcast is received in rooms of polished stone and elaborate decoration. Citizens sit beneath bright artificial light, surrounded by soft fabrics, painted faces, and tables covered with food. Their clothing reflects the colors of the arena. Their cosmetics are carefully arranged for social gatherings. Violence appears upon clear screens, framed by music, commentary, and ceremony, until suffering becomes another surface upon which status can be displayed. The political order depends upon more than the games. Military force guards roads, mines, fields, and the borders between districts. Surveillance reaches into workplaces, schools, stations, and homes. Food control allows the capital to determine who receives enough, who receives less, and who must trade labor for survival. Public ceremony gives these controls a familiar shape, repeating them until obedience seems woven into ordinary life. You walk along a district street beneath cables strung between buildings. Loudspeakers hang above the road, their metal mouths turned towards the houses. A patrol passes without hurry, boots striking the pavement in even intervals. Posters show the seal of Panem and carefully chosen words about peace. In a shop window, ration cards rest beneath glass. The paper is thin, but its meaning is heavy. The fences surrounding many districts carry their own quiet presence. Electricity moves through the wires with a steady metallic hum, almost too low to hear, yet impossible to forget once noticed. Frost gathers on the posts and melts in narrow trails. Beyond the fence, the forest waits beneath a pale sky. Inside, people measure their steps, their words, and the amount of food remaining in their cupboards. The capital calls the arrangement peace because the guns have fallen silent in the streets. Yet peace in Panem is not the absence of force. It is force organized into schedules, uniforms, broadcasts, and records. The districts are allowed to continue their specialized work because that work is necessary. They remain separate because separation makes control easier. The old rebellion is remembered whenever the treaty is read aloud. At the capital station, freight arrives beneath a roof of iron and glass. Workers unload crates while officials compare them with lists. Coal dust darkens one platform, fish water shines on another, and sawdust gathers where timber has been stacked. The goods are carried inward through bright corridors, past guards and polished signs. Above the station, clocks mark the same hour across Panem, though the people beneath them live in very different worlds. The railways make the districts visible to one another without allowing them to meet as equals. A miner may see luxury fabric pass through District 12, while a fisherman may hear of coal arriving from distant hills. A farmer may watch soldiers escort a sealed train towards the capital. Goods cross the country freely. People do not. The train moves through darkness, and its windows offer only brief fragments of distant settlements. The new state requires a center, and the capital becomes that center through architecture as much as law. Its avenues are laid out in deliberate lines. Its ministries occupy monumental buildings, and its public spaces are designed for gatherings. The city's wealth is made visible at every turn. Stone gleams after rain. Metal railings remain free of rust. Lamps burn beneath covered walkways, keeping the evening bright when the districts have already gone dark. The capital night has a different color from the night beyond it. Electric signs soften the darkness into blue, violet, and white. Water moves through fountains even when the air is cold. Glass towers hold reflections of one another, and polished pavements preserve the shape of passing lights. You hear distant music from a public hall, the whisper of heated air through vents, and the faint rolling sound of vehicles crossing the avenues. In the districts, darkness gathers more heavily. The mines close, the fields become indistinct, and fishing boats return to their moorings. Windows shine in scattered clusters, though some houses remain unlit to preserve fuel. Families sit close together around small stoves. The day's work remains in their clothing, their hands, and the ache behind their eyes. Above the roofs, the railway carries another load towards the capital. The contrast between the capital and the districts is not an accident of geography. It is the visible result of a system that gathers resources towards one place and distributes authority from that same place. Technology advances most quickly where wealth is concentrated. Comfort becomes ordinary for those near the center and exceptional for those who supply it. The districts are described as necessary partners, although their obligations are enforced by the victor. You stand in a government hall while clerks prepare notices for the coming year. Dates are stamped onto forms. District numbers are written in careful rows. The words Treaty of Treason appear at the top of every document, followed by instructions regarding the reaping, the tributes, and the broadcast. The papers are folded, sealed, and placed into wooden cases. A calendar hangs beside the desk, its months turning slowly towards the appointed day. The treaty has become part of the weather of Panem, something expected to return whether or not anyone wishes to remember it. Every year brings the same preparations. Officials inspect the bowls. Guards secure the squares. Schools record the ages of eligible children. Families calculate the risks of food, debt, and additional names. The capital prepares costumes, cameras, speeches, and music, turning political domination into a national occasion. In District 12, the reaping square is empty before the crowd arrives. Morning rain has darkened the boards of the platform, and water beads along the rim of the glass bowl. Two officials carry the bowl inside a wooden case, protecting it from the wind. The slips of paper are prepared elsewhere, each bearing a name in ink. They are folded to the same size, so that chance appears clean and impartial. You can smell wet stone, cold wool, and faint smoke rising from nearby chimneys. The houses remain quiet behind their windows. Somewhere beyond the square, a freight train begins to move, its distant wagons carrying coal towards the capital. The sound travels slowly across the town, passing over roofs and fences. For a moment, the low rumble seems to blend with the electric hum surrounding the district. The crowd gathers gradually, without conversation loud enough to carry. Children stand together beneath the supervision of teachers. Parents remain near the outer barriers. Officials climb the platform and arrange their papers beside the glass bowl. The capital's emblem watches from behind them, bright against the dark cloth. You feel the cold through the soles of your shoes and hear paper shifting whenever the bowl is touched. Beyond District 12, the same preparation takes place in every district. Agricultural squares are swept clean. Fishing towns raise platforms beside warehouses. Forestry settlements gather beneath trees whose branches are heavy with snow. Industrial communities assemble near factories, where machines continue their low work during the ceremony. The districts differ in language, clothing, labor, and landscape, but the reaping gives them one shared morning. The capital receives the images before the ceremony begins. Cameras are tested, cables checked, and commentators arrange their notes. Bright lights are directed towards the stage. Polished stone around the broadcast studios reflects the equipment and the people moving among it. Somewhere beyond the walls, citizens discuss clothing, food, and appearances, while the districts wait beneath open skies. The annual Hunger Games are therefore both punishment and announcement. They declare that the districts lost the dark days. They remind every generation that the Treaty of Treason still governs the country. They show that the capital can reach into every community, select 2 children from each one, and place their lives before the entire nation. The spectacle is shared because fear is easier to maintain when everyone is made to witness it. You remain in the square as the morning light strengthens. The clouds thin above the rooftops, though the air stays cold. A guard adjusts the wire around the platform. An official smooths the papers with one hand. Inside the glass bowl, folded slips lie in a quiet heap, white against the dark interior. Their edges touch and separate with the smallest movement. The first speech begins. The words travel through the loudspeakers and return from the walls. The capital is praised for peace. The districts are reminded of sacrifice. The dark days are named, and the Treaty of Treason is placed once more at the center of memory. Around you, heads remain lowered. The crowd listens while the paper waits. A hand enters the bowl. The slips rustle against the glass. The sound is thin, bright, and strangely intimate. It rises above the wind for a moment, then settles again. Beyond the square, the railway continues towards the capital, carrying coal from District 12 and goods from every other district. The train moves through the morning fog, slow and distant. The glass bowl turns slightly in the official's hand. Light passes through it. The names remain folded. Around you, the crowd stands very still. The fences hum at the edge of the town. Cold coal dust rests upon the windowsills. The capital shines far away, and the districts wait beneath it. The paper slips make a softer sound now. One touches another. A sleeve moves. Breath gathers in the cold air. The platform boards creak beneath a careful step. You look towards the bowl. You listen to the quiet rustle within it. The morning holds its silence. The reaping is about to begin. The reaping is about to begin, yet beneath the stillness of the square lies another history, older than the names folded inside the bowl. You are standing at the edge of that history now, where the cold morning opens into a remembered war. Panem calls the rebellion against the capital the Dark Days, although the surviving record offers no complete chronology. Dates drift apart, districts disappear from the account, and the order of battles remains uncertain. You find only fragments preserved in speeches, damaged archives, frightened recollections, and the silences imposed afterwards. The rebellion involved the capital and all 13 districts, although each district carried its own hunger, distance, losses, and reasons for resisting. Communities were separated by ruined roads, broken railways, collapsed bridges, and long stretches of territory no longer safely crossed. The war survives first as absence, as much in what cannot be found as in what is remembered. Ash-grey daylight lies over the abandoned districts, thin as worn cloth beneath a colourless sky. Empty streets extend between buildings whose windows have lost their glass, while small pieces of plaster rest beside rusted railings. A bent sign turns in the wind, making a dry tap against its metal support. Somewhere beyond the damaged houses, water moves through a cracked channel hidden beneath weeds and fallen stone. The air carries dust, old smoke, and the faint mineral scent of damp concrete. No crowd gathers here, and no footsteps answer the uncertain shifting of loose gravel. A military announcement crackles from a distant loudspeaker, breaks into static, and returns in a voice too calm for the landscape around it. The words are difficult to distinguish, though their rhythm remains familiar. Above a roofline, a black bird calls once against the silence, then folds its wings and vanishes into the pale distance. In the capital's account, the war begins with disorder and ends with punishment. The official story does not offer you a map of every front, nor a clear procession of victories and defeats. Instead, it presents a pattern of accusation, resistance, military response, and final submission. Districts rebel, the capital answers, and the old order is restored through force. The language is polished until the suffering becomes almost weightless. Roads are described as severed rather than bombed, settlements as evacuated rather than emptied, and families as displaced rather than scattered by violence. The central certainty remains unchanged. District 13 rebelled, confronted the capital militarily, and was declared destroyed during the war. Its disappearance is placed within the official story as proof that rebellion carries its own conclusion. The district does not merely lose. It vanishes, and that vanishing is made to represent the fate awaiting every other district that considers resistance. Under the earth, the silence has another character. You are moving along a sealed corridor beneath District 13, where the walls hold a steady coolness and the floor has been polished by many measured steps. Ventilation, fans turn behind grills, sending stale air through the underground passages with a continuous, patient murmur. The low vibration of machinery travels through the soles of your feet. Lamps set into the ceiling cast an even white glow without the changing softness of daylight. Doors open and close at scheduled intervals, and notices are fixed neatly beside them. Somewhere beyond the concrete partitions, a lift descends with a heavy mechanical hum. The air tastes faintly of iron and boiled grain. You hear no wind beneath the ground, yet the bunker is never still. Pipes tremble, fans rotate, and concealed engines maintain the life that the capital has declared impossible. District 13 had long been associated with graphite mining, a resource drawn from dark seams beneath its land. It was also associated with nuclear weapons, knowledge and materials that made the district unlike any other part of Panem. These associations remain scattered through the surviving references, never arranged into a complete account of how power was gathered there. You encounter the district through its reputation, through the threat implied by its weapons and through the fear surrounding its disappearance. When District 13 became the center of the final resistance, its old industries acquired a new meaning. Mines, laboratories, bunkers, and military command rooms belonged to one story of survival. The capital understood the danger of allowing that story to remain visible. Its version therefore reduced District 13 to a warning, declaring that the district had been destroyed after rebellion and confrontation. The official history required no surviving streets, visible graves, or witnesses able to contradict it. Deep within the bunker, the passage narrows beside a row of numbered rooms. Metal trays rest on shelves, each item placed at a precise angle, while a timetable covers one section of the wall. The clocks show the same hour, although no sun enters the underground district. Children pass in quiet groups, their footsteps softened by rubber flooring and their voices lowered beneath the turning fans. A lift bell sounds once, then fades into the machinery. The smell of disinfectant mingles with cooked vegetables, graphite dust, and the warm odor of electrical equipment. Along the corridor, a loudspeaker releases a brief military announcement, its edges broken by static. Instructions concern meals, work periods, drills, and permitted movement. The bunker possesses the severe calm of a place that has planned for every emergency. Beneath the buried district, survival is not spacious or free, but it is organized, continuous, and real. The capital claims that District 13 was destroyed during the war, yet the claim conceals a settlement that cannot be spoken of publicly. At some point in the conflict, the capital and District 13 agree to a ceasefire or arrangement that permits both sides to preserve a necessary fiction. The capital may claim victory, while District 13 survives underground. The terms remain hidden beneath layers of official language, and the original trilogy does not provide a complete chronology, placing every event with certainty. You are left with the shape of the agreement rather than each date and clause. District 13 withdraws from the visible world, while the capital announces its annihilation. The buried district accepts isolation as the price of continued existence. Above ground, Panem learns that the enemy has been eliminated. Below ground, citizens continue their regulated lives, maintaining machinery, preserving records, and waiting through years that the public believes they never reach. The underground hours pass without dawn, although changes in the air mark the movement of time. Warm currents rise from kitchens, and cooler drafts descend from higher shafts. Condensation gathers in fine beads along a pipe, then slips slowly towards a joint sealed with dark resin. The ventilation fans alter their pitch as different sections of the bunker become occupied. In one room, paper is folded into exact squares. In another, boots are brushed clean beside a drain. The surfaces are hard, smooth, and practical beneath your hands. A vibration continues in the wall, steady enough to become part of thought. From a nearby speaker, a clipped voice announces the beginning of a work interval. Static hisses around each syllable, giving the message a distant, metallic quality. The corridor smells of soap, dust, and stored fabric. In that enclosed world, every breath belongs to a system that has survived by refusing uncertainty. Above ground, the capital turns the hidden settlement into a public absence. District 13 is not described as a place that might have endured, nor as a defeated enemy whose people could have remained somewhere beyond the map. It is presented as ash, crater, memory, and consequence. The capital's victory is made complete by the defeated district's disappearance from ordinary sight. Buildings do not need to be shown collapsing if citizens are taught to imagine the ruins. The official story says that rebellion led to military confrontation, and military confrontation led to destruction. Each part of the explanation supports the next, forming a closed chain that leaves no room for questions. In schools, the dark days become a lesson in obedience. In broadcasts, they become a reason for vigilance. In ceremonies, they become a solemn justification for the authority governing every district. The war is finished, yet its political work continues. At midday, the ruined streets hold a weak light beneath a blanket of dust. The sun is present somewhere above the clouds, but its brightness reaches the ground only as a dull silver wash. Burned rail lines disappear beneath weeds, and the remains of signal towers lean over empty embankments. A shutter knocks softly against a wall whenever the wind crosses the open doorway. Nothing smells fresh. The air is marked by ash, wet brick, and the faint sweetness of leaves beginning to decay. You step over a length of cable half buried in the road, its rubber casing split by weather. Beyond it, an old loudspeaker remains attached to a pole, though no current appears to reach it. From inside, a roofless building comes a solitary bird call. The sound travels across the abandoned district until the broad quiet absorbs it. The annual games are framed as a memorial to the war and to the capital's power to punish. Their ceremonies do not preserve an open account of the dark days, because remembrance is shaped into obedience before it can become inquiry. Each district is required to witness the selection of its children, and each broadcast suggests that order has been purchased with their vulnerability. The games transform the old rebellion into a recurring display. The capital appears as guardian, judge, and historian, while the districts are placed in the position of inheritors who must continually repay a debt. Hunger, destruction, and death are joined to rebellion until resistance seems less like a political choice than a return to catastrophe. The war is not allowed to become distant. It is brought into every year, every household, and every square where names are drawn from glass or metal bowls. In a schoolroom, light falls evenly across rows of desks. The walls are painted a tired cream, and the edges of the maps have curled away from their pins. Chalk dust rests along the wooden ledge beneath a board filled with dates, although the dates do not form a complete sequence. A fan turns near the ceiling, stirring the warm air without cooling it. Through an open window comes the muted clatter of carts, followed by the distant pulse of a loudspeaker. The teacher's voice rises and falls with practiced steadiness. On a desk, a child's pencil rolls until it touches a book. The paper smells of fiber, ink, and storage. Outside, ash-grey daylight settles upon the schoolyard, softening the fence and the empty goal frame. Somewhere beyond the roofs, the old bird call returns, too distant to belong to the lesson. The official account is repeated until its omissions begin to feel like facts. Children learn that the capital defended Panem, that the districts endangered themselves, and that District 13 was erased by the consequences of its own defiance. They are not given every military movement, failed negotiation, or community cut off from its neighbors. The history is simplified so that the moral conclusion arrives before the evidence. Rebellion becomes hunger, destruction, and death, while obedience is connected with food, shelter, and the return of ordinary routines. This teaching does not require every citizen to believe the story in precisely the same way. It requires only that alternative versions become difficult to assemble. A grandmother may remember a missing road, a father may recall a different announcement, and an old worker may know that supplies once traveled further than the public maps suggest. Yet private fragments remain isolated unless they can meet one another. The capital governs the meeting place as carefully as the memory itself. The bunker beneath District 13 offers no natural horizon. You pass through rooms where stored grain stands behind locked doors and where grey uniforms hang in identical rows. Every object seems chosen for durability rather than comfort. Concrete bears the marks of old repairs, while cables run beneath transparent covers along the lower walls. A narrow vent releases air with a soft, dry breath. In a dining hall, metal cups touch the tables as people rise according to schedule. The water tastes faintly mineral, and the soup carries the mild scent of root vegetables. A clock ticks above the serving hatch, regular and unhurried. The machinery never stops entirely. Its low vibration remains beneath conversation, footsteps, and the clink of utensils. The surviving district has learned to live in a world where each hour must be measured, each resource counted, and each corridor remembered without sunlight. The hidden survival of District 13 changes the meaning of the dark days, although the public cannot yet receive that change. A district described as destroyed is functioning beneath the ground, and its citizens have formed a highly regulated bunker society around the requirements of survival. The settlement is not an untouched remnant of the old world. It has been reshaped by isolation, military discipline, rationing, and the long necessity of secrecy. Its existence demonstrates that the capital's victory was never as complete as its broadcasts claimed. It also reveals that the ceasefire was more than an ending to open combat. It was an agreement about what could be seen, what could be remembered, and what each side would permit the other to call truth. Above ground, District 13 is a grave. Beneath the ground, it is a command center, a population, and a patient continuation of the war's unanswered questions. Cold air gathers in a stairwell, descending through several levels of concrete. Each step has been worn slightly at its center, although the edges remain sharp beneath the overhead lamps. Your hand moves along a painted rail whose surface is smooth from repeated use. The sound of your movement travels downwards, returning as a faint echo from the landings. Fans draw air through hidden shafts, and the current touches your face with a dry, mechanical coolness. A red indicator glows above a sealed door, reflected in a polished patch of floor. Behind the wall, something heavy begins to turn, and the vibration increases for several seconds before settling again. A notice flutters beneath a grill, disturbed by constant circulation. No rain can reach this place, but the smell of wet stone lingers from pipes and underground chambers. Somewhere far above, beyond layers of soil and rock, the surface remains pale beneath the weather. The capital preserves its authority by keeping the war present, but incomplete. The dark days are named often enough to remain familiar, yet described vaguely enough to prevent shared investigation. The word itself carries a weight that does not depend upon a precise calendar. It suggests darkness, confusion, and the danger of looking too closely. Official broadcasts speak of sacrifice and restoration, while the annual ceremonies present punishment as remembrance. District citizens hear that their ancestors suffered because rebellion disturbed the order of Panem. The capital therefore places itself inside the memory as the power that ended suffering, even though its military actions created much of the destruction being remembered. A government controlling the archive can arrange cause and consequence until the survivor appears responsible for the wound. History becomes a political instrument rather than an open record, and the past is made to serve the needs of the present. In a district settlement, a loudspeaker hangs above a street where laundry moves between two damaged buildings. Its announcement is interrupted by static, then continues in the same formal tone. The message concerns attendance, ration collection, and the approaching anniversary ceremonies. Beneath the speaker, a drain carries rainwater through a channel darkened by soot. The pavement is rough beneath your shoes, with small stones embedded in the hardened surface. A thin mist rests near the ground, and the ash-grey morning has not yet lifted. Chimneys breathe weakly above the roofs, releasing the smell of coal and damp timber. A window closes somewhere behind you, followed by the soft scrape of a bolt. Across the street, a child's paper bird has lodged against a wire and trembles in the wind. No one reaches for it. From beyond the houses, a bird call rises against the announcements and fades between them. The Mockingjay becomes one of the surviving signs that the capital cannot fully regulate. Its connection with the earlier rebellion is not simple, because the bird emerges from a world the capital attempted to design and control. The Mockingjay carries the memory of defiance without needing a speech, document, or public archive. Later resistance gives the symbol new force, but its roots reach back towards the rebellion that the capital calls the Dark Days. You encounter the bird as an image, a sound, and a small disturbance in the official arrangement of things. It belongs to fields, woods, and settlement edges where messages may pass beyond the loudspeaker's reach. The capital can prohibit certain signs, alter their meaning, or punish those who display them. It cannot entirely prevent a remembered call from crossing a road, a forest, or a damaged district. Memory sometimes survives as a shape too small to be confiscated. A black bird rests on a broken beam above an empty station. Its feathers appear almost blue where thin daylight touches them, and the wind lifts the narrow edges of its wings. Below, weeds have grown through the sleepers, hiding the old geometry of the tracks. A length of wire swings from one post to another, producing a soft metallic tremor whenever the air moves. The station roof is open to the sky, yet the remaining walls retain the smell of soot and wet timber. Light gathers in shallow pools across the platform, separated by shadows from the broken arches. In the distance, a fan from some surviving facility turns behind a wall, its mechanical breathing too low to locate. The bird gives a clear note that travels across the ruined rails. For a moment, the abandoned place seems to hold an answer, though no human voice follows. The districts remember the war differently from one another. In one place, the dark days are carried through a family story about missing relatives and a road that no longer exists. In another, memory is attached to a factory that never reopened, or to an older generation that lowers its voice whenever District 13 is mentioned. Some citizens accept the capital's account because it is the only version taught openly. Others preserve fragments that do not fit the broadcast. The hidden history of District 13 forms another memory, disciplined and enclosed beneath the surface. There, the war is not a distant lesson, but an unfinished operation whose consequences govern every meal, assignment, and movement. Official broadcasts, district recollection, and underground knowledge therefore occupy the same world without sharing the same truth. The dark days are one name placed over several histories, each shaped by fear, survival, and the limits imposed upon speech. Beneath the bunker, the temperature remains almost unchanged. You enter a storage chamber where shelves extend into shadow, carrying sealed containers marked with dates and coded symbols. Dust lies lightly along the upper edges, while the lower shelves show clean marks from frequent use. A pipe ticks as it cools, each sound separated by a patient interval. The ventilation system draws air towards a distant shaft, and loose paper shifts across the floor before settling beside a wall. In a neighboring passage, boots strike the ground in a measured rhythm. A loudspeaker announces the next period, its voice flattened by the concrete around it. The light has no golden hour and no dusk, only the gradual fatigue of eyes accustomed to artificial brightness. Somewhere beyond the storage rooms, a generator turns with a low, persistent vibration. The underground district seems to breathe through machines rather than weather. The capital's warning about District 13 remains central because it joins a vanished place to an imaginable future. Citizens are taught that the district rebelled, confronted the capital, and disappeared beneath the force of its own mistake. The details of the settlement are withheld, and the possibility of underground survival is removed from public thought. In this way, the destroyed district continues to serve the capital more effectively than a visible ruin might have done. A ruin could be examined, measured, and compared with testimony. An absence can be shaped into any lesson required. The capital uses District 13 to show that resistance ends in starvation, bombardment, and death. It uses the games to repeat the lesson each year, placing living children within a ritual that commemorates war by recreating power. The memory of destruction becomes a structure around the districts, as solid and difficult to escape as any fence. The square grows quieter as the announcement ends. Paper slips remain inside the bowl, their pale edges pressed together beneath the official seal. Around you, coats hold the faint smells of smoke, wool, and cold metal. The fence hums beyond the crowd, while condensation slips down the side of a nearby post. Ash-grey light rests upon the faces gathered beneath it, softening expressions without making them peaceful. Somewhere at the edge of town, a ventilation unit turns inside a locked building, sending a low vibration through the ground. The loudspeaker gives a final click and falls silent. A bird crosses beyond the roofs, black against the whitening sky, and the note it leaves behind seems to belong both to the ruined past and to a future not yet spoken. Cold air moves across your face as the platform waits. The dark days are therefore not simply the opening chapter of Panem's history. They are a permanent arrangement of remembrance, repeated until event and interpretation become difficult to separate. The rebellion against the capital involved all 13 districts, yet the surviving account gives each only a narrow portion of the whole. District 13 is declared destroyed, while its people continue beneath the earth. The capital claims victory through a story requiring the enemy to be absent, and District 13 preserves survival through silence, requiring that story to remain unchallenged. Between those positions, ordinary citizens inherit fragments. They remember hunger, damaged streets, missing names, and warnings spoken during ceremonies. They hear the word rebellion and are encouraged to imagine only destruction. They see the Mockingjay and sense, perhaps without knowing why, that another meaning has endured beneath the official one. The platform boards are cold beneath your feet. A small draft passes through the square, carrying the smell of coal dust and frozen earth. The nearest windows reflect the pale sky, while their sills hold a fine grey line left by the night air. Beyond the fence, grass bends in one direction, then slowly returns upright. No machinery can be heard clearly here, yet the town retains a faint trembling beneath its silence. The loudspeaker waits above the square with its dark mouth facing downwards. Its metal casing is marked by rain, rust, and old repairs. A loose cable taps against the pole in an irregular pattern. You hear fabric move, a throat being cleared, and the careful breath of someone standing close by. Above the roofs, the morning remains colorless. The bird does not call again, but its absence seems to remain. The capital does not need to destroy every witness if it can control the story told about those witnesses. A surviving grandmother may carry a memory, yet that memory weakens when no public document supports it. A district worker may know that supplies once traveled towards District 13, although the official map shows only emptiness. A child may hear a mockingjay and feel the shape of an older rebellion without possessing its name. These fragments can remain separate for years, harmless so long as they never form a shared account. The capital's power lies partly in deciding which memories are repeated together and which are kept apart. The games, broadcasts, lessons, and ceremonies create a single permitted pattern. Against it stand scattered recollections, disciplined records below ground, and small signs refusing to disappear. The war ends in the public story, yet the truth continues in the spaces between its sentences. The bowl is lifted slightly, and the paper slips settle with a delicate rustle. The sound travels through the square more clearly than the distant machinery. A sleeve brushes against another sleeve. Someone shifts weight from one foot to the other, and the boards answer with a muted creak. The air has grown sharper since dawn, touching your hands through the fabric. Cold dust remains on the windowsills, and a thin rim of frost has formed along the shaded side of the fence. The loudspeaker overhead gives a soft electrical murmur, as though gathering itself before speech. Far beyond the town, roads cross the pale fields and disappear among the hills. Beneath those fields, beneath stone and buried rails, machines continue their low work in sealed corridors. The same country contains the square, the ruins, the hidden bunker, and the memories each place is permitted to keep. The first name is about to be spoken, but the deeper history has already surrounded the moment. It lies in the ash-grey daylight over abandoned districts, in military announcements breaking through static, and in the bird remembered against silence. It lies in the official claim that District 13 was destroyed, and in the underground society continuing beneath that claim. It lies in the settlement that allowed the capital to call itself victorious, while the final resistance preserved its strength below the earth. The dark days are remembered as a warning, a memorial, a political instrument, and a concealed beginning. Their chronology remains incomplete, yet their consequences are carefully arranged. Every year, the capital places the war before the districts again, asking them to accept one version of what happened. Every year, hidden memories wait beneath the permitted story, as steady as machinery turning in darkness. You follow the official map of Panem from the northern forests to the southern plains, tracing 12 districts around the capital's central authority. The printed borders are clean, the names carefully arranged, and no blank space suggests that anything has been removed. District 1 produces luxury, District 2 shapes stone and trains soldiers, while District 12 sends coal into the machinery of the nation. Between these recognized territories, the map offers no uncertainty, no hidden province, and no surviving mark of another government. Yet District 13 is absent from the official list of active districts during the period of the original trilogy. Its name belongs to an earlier conflict, placed safely within the past and surrounded by the language of destruction. The supposed destruction of District 13 explains why Panem has only 12 districts. You are asked to accept that absence as proof, although the silence around it has the careful quality of something guarded. Beneath the printed roads, the earth holds its own geography, measured in concrete ceilings, narrow corridors, stairwells, chambers, and sealed doors. Muted fluorescent lighting rests along the passageways without the changing color of a natural sunrise. No pale dawn enters through a window, and no evening shadow lengthens across a room. The air carries the dry chill of buried stone, with a faint metallic trace beneath the smell of disinfectant. Polished floors receive each footstep and return it softly, so movement seems to keep time with distant machinery. Along the walls, pipes pass behind painted panels, and small vents release a steady breath into the underground settlement. Somewhere below, a door closes with restrained pressure, followed by the measured sound of boots crossing an intersection. The earth remains still above you, while the hidden district continues its ordered life beneath the surface. You descend into District 13 through passages designed less for welcome than endurance, and the settlement reveals itself by function rather than ornament. Residential areas lie beside command rooms, hospitals, food systems, workshops, storage chambers, and technical facilities. Every section belongs to a practical purpose, because survival beneath the surface leaves little space for useless decoration. The surviving population lives below ground, maintaining a society that the capital has declared impossible. Rooms are numbered, corridors are labeled, and schedules determine when people move through shared spaces. The settlement is not a collection of forgotten shelters, but a continuing district with administration, labor, education, medicine, and military organization. You pass through a residential corridor where doors open onto compact rooms, then turn towards a command chamber filled with maps and communications equipment. District 13 has disappeared from Panem's official story, yet it has not disappeared from the earth. The concrete above you bears faint lines from old construction, where poured sections meet and have settled into one another over decades. Underfoot, the polished surface is smooth enough to reflect broken strips of white light. A hospital entrance carries the sharp smell of disinfectant, clean linen, and medicines stored behind sealed cupboards. The light remains constant in the treatment rooms, neither warming nor fading with the hours beyond the walls. A low ventilation hum passes through the ceiling, joined by the softened clatter of carts moving along another corridor. Near a communal area, metal cups touch a serving counter, and powdered drinks leave a faint sweetness in the dry air. Rationed grain lies on a tray, plain and pale, leaving a dusty taste against your tongue. The settlement has its own weather, made from air circulation, temperature, footsteps, and the subtle pressure of machinery beneath the floor. Daily life in District 13 is organized by strict schedules, communal regulation, and the belief that individual habits must yield to collective survival. You receive a timetable assigning waking, washing, meals, work, education, medical inspection, recreation, and sleep. Meal cards record the food available to each person, while official schedules govern the distribution of breakfast, midday nourishment, and the evening ration. Food is rationed carefully, and no dining room offers the abundance associated with capital banquets. The dry taste of grain and the thin sweetness of powdered drinks become familiar parts of ordinary meals. Clothing is assigned according to practical function rather than fashion, with colors and materials indicating work, medical duties, technical responsibilities, or military service. The body becomes another part of the administrative system, dressed, fed, examined, and directed according to need. In District 13, survival has been preserved through rules that reach into the smallest details of the day. The dining hall holds a muted warmth from bodies gathered beneath the concrete ceiling, though the air remains cool around the walls. Long tables stand in parallel rows, their surfaces scrubbed until they show only a dull reflection of the overhead tubes. A serving hatch opens and closes at measured intervals, releasing steam, metal sounds, and the faint scent of boiled grains. Cards slide across the counter, checked by hands that move with practiced efficiency. Chairs scrape briefly against the floor before settling into stillness. Powdered drink clings lightly to the rim of a cup, leaving a chalky residue when the liquid has been finished. Beyond the hall, footsteps travel through the corridors in separate currents, each group moving according to its allotted hour. There is no open sky above the meal, yet the timetable gives the room a kind of artificial morning and evening. Time survives underground as a sequence of signals, bells, cards, and instructions. Military discipline shapes the behavior of civilians and soldiers alike, because District 13 has learned to treat disorder as a threat to existence. You see civilians standing in marked lines, answering questions briefly, and moving aside when a uniformed group passes. Soldiers carry themselves with trained economy, their faces controlled, and their movements governed by habit. Even those who do not serve appear accustomed to inspection, assignment, and obedience. The district's command structure reaches through residential life, technical work, medical practice, and public communication. Military knowledge has been preserved in rooms where weapons are maintained, strategies studied, and old conflicts kept active in maps and records. District 13 maintains weapons and military capabilities despite its small visible population, making its survival more than a refuge for civilians. The hidden district possesses force, organization, and the knowledge required to challenge the capital when secrecy finally gives way to open rebellion. A narrow corridor leads towards the technical facilities, where the air tastes of dust, oil, and warmed metal. Small indicator lights glow across consoles, while cables disappear into the walls and reappear beneath protective covers. The quiet here is never complete, since fans turn continuously and cooling systems pass a restrained vibration through the floor. You hear footsteps keeping time on polished surfaces, separated by intervals of silence as workers pause before secured doors. Tool drawers open with short metallic clicks and panels close with a heavier sound. The fluorescent tubes make every object appear precise, flattening shadows and removing the softness found beneath daylight. Beyond one reinforced barrier, weapons rest in storage, preserved with the care given to instruments whose future use remains possible. Nothing here resembles the Capitol's bright display rooms, yet the machinery carries its own authority. It is hidden, durable, and prepared for an hour that the official map insists will never arrive. The Capitol does not publicly acknowledge District 13 survival before the rebellion becomes open, and the silence serves both power and protection. For the Capitol, admitting that a condemned district continues beneath the ground would expose the incompleteness of its history. For District 13, public recognition would invite attack before its systems, weapons, and population could withstand direct pressure. Secrecy therefore becomes a shared condition, though the two sides use it for opposite purposes. The Capitol presents destruction as settled fact, while District 13 preserves survival as concealed knowledge. You move through a society forced to exist without confirmation, relying on internal records, trusted messengers, and the quiet continuity of daily work. The absence from the official list becomes a shield as well as a wound. District 13 survives because Panem is taught not to look for it, and because those beneath the earth understand how much depends upon remaining uncounted. In the hospital, the smell of disinfectant settles into the fabric of the curtains and the seams of the uniforms. Pale light lies across metal trays, glass containers, and carefully folded bandages. The ceiling presses low above the beds, though the rooms remain orderly and bright enough for constant treatment. Air moves through the ventilation system with a dry, filtered quality, carrying no scent of rain, soil, or distant vegetation. A trolley wheel turns softly along the corridor, and its rubber edge leaves no mark upon the polished floor. You hear a nurse's shoes approach, pause, and continue towards a numbered room. Somewhere nearby, water runs briefly through a basin before the pipe becomes silent again. The underground hospital offers safety from the open air, yet its cleanliness carries the memory of emergency. Beneath District 13, every surface seems prepared for injury, illness, repair, and the disciplined continuation of life. You encounter the district's leader in the political order formed beneath the surface, where President Alma Coyne directs District 13 during the Second Rebellion. Her authority is not ceremonial, because the settlement has been arranged around command, resource control, and coordinated resistance. Coyne stands within a system that values efficiency, secrecy, and obedience while presenting itself as the necessary alternative to the capital. Under her leadership, military operations, communications, propaganda, and civilian routines become parts of one organized campaign. The district does not simply shelter opposition. It offers the rebellion a central administration and a defined chain of command. You see how every ration, uniform, schedule, and assignment connects to a broader political structure. Alma Coyne's government is built in the same buried spaces where citizens sleep, heal, work, and wait. The hidden state has survived long enough to become more than a secret community. It has become a rival authority, ready to replace the power that once declared it dead. The command rooms are colder than the residential areas, with reinforced doors and walls covered in maps, symbols, and written instructions. Fluorescent light falls without variation across tables crowded with folders, screens, radios, and sealed containers. A low electrical hum comes from the equipment, while ventilation grills release narrow currents that stir the edges of loose papers. You stand near a wall where routes through Panem are marked in thin lines, connecting districts, railways, forests, and capital positions. The map gives no impression of wilderness, because every distance has been converted into information. Voices remain quiet, and every conversation seems to end before becoming fully personal. Boots cross the room in controlled intervals, their sound absorbed by the heavy construction. In this chamber, the world above is reduced to coordinates and risks. District 13 governs through the same severe clarity that keeps its buried population alive. Katniss Everdeen is taken to District 13 after the destruction of the capital's arena in the 75th Hunger Games, carried away from the visible theater of Panem into the concealed machinery of resistance. The arena has been a spectacle of architecture, lighting, cameras, costumes, and controlled violence, while the district below offers concrete ceilings and undecorated corridors. You enter a place where survival is not performed before an audience, but recorded on schedules and measured through medical checks. Katniss arrives as a symbol whose image already belongs to several competing powers. The capital has used her as a tribute, a victor, and a public figure, while the rebellion sees in her a possibility for political communication. District 13 must therefore protect her body while managing the meaning attached to it. The destruction of the 75th arena opens a passage from theater to bunker, from ornamental public architecture to underground command. Katniss crosses that passage into a state that has waited beneath the official story. Outside the living quarters, the air becomes cooler, touched by the mineral smell of concrete and the faint odor of dampness behind sealed walls. The corridor bends at right angles, preventing any long view towards an imagined horizon. Light gathers beneath the ceiling in regular pools, leaving the spaces between them only slightly dimmer. Doors carry numbers rather than names, and the paint around their handles has been worn by repeated use. A distant alarm sounds once, then disappears into the machinery of the settlement. You feel the floor transmit a small vibration from a vehicle or generator moving through an unseen level. No breeze enters from fields, and no bird calls through the ventilation shafts. The underground world remains physically close, its distances compressed into turns, staircases, and security gates. Against that restraint, memories of the capital's vast theaters and bright avenues appear almost unreal, like painted scenes held behind glass. The contrast between District 13 and the capital is not merely visual, because each society expresses a different understanding of order. The capital displays power through ornamental public architecture, elaborate clothing, feasts, avenues, arenas, and spaces designed to be watched. District 13 conceals power within schedules, corridors, weapons stores, medical wards, and undecorated rooms where decisions are made. One authority turns politics into spectacle, while the other turns survival into administration. You move from a world of excess into one where every object is justified by use, and waste is treated as a danger. Yet District 13 is not free from control. Its citizens are regulated by meal cards, assigned clothing, military expectations, and timetables that leave little room for private improvisation. The capital's excess distracts the eye, while District 13 austerity directs the body. Beneath the ground, another vision of order is taking shape, severe enough to resemble the power it opposes. A residential room contains only the objects permitted by the district's practical needs, with a bed, storage space, clothing, and a small surface for personal belongings. The walls remain bare, and the steady lighting makes the room appear suspended outside ordinary hours. Fabric carries the clean, dry scent of industrial washing, while the blanket holds a faint roughness against your hands. From the corridor comes the passing rhythm of footsteps, followed by the soft closing of a nearby door. The ventilation system lowers the temperature during one period and raises it slightly during another, creating a weak imitation of changing time. There is no window through which clouds can be followed, and no sunrise to mark the beginning of work. Instead, the schedule determines when rest begins and when the body must return to service. You lie beneath the concrete, listening to the settlement breathe through vents, pipes, generators, and distant human movement. The survival of District 13 demonstrates that the capital's official history is incomplete because the supposed destruction of a district has become the foundation of a living government. The capital's account does not merely omit a detail. It removes an entire population, military tradition, and political claim from the visible world. You begin to understand that history in Panem is not only remembered, but manufactured through repetition. A district can be destroyed in public language while continuing in private geography. A war can be presented as concluded while its institutions preserve themselves below the earth. District 13 existence therefore challenges the authority of the official explanations surrounding the dark days. Its survival gives physical evidence that the permitted story has edges, gaps, and buried contradictions. The name District 13 returns across maps, commands, memories, and rumors, each appearance disturbing the idea that Panem's history has already been completed. The passage towards the archive is lined with older concrete, darker from years of dust and contact. Small lamps illuminate the floor rather than the ceiling, leaving the upper walls in a subdued grey. Paper boxes sit behind wire panels, and the air carries the dry scent of cardboard, ink, and sealed storage. You hear a ventilation fan falter for a moment before returning to its even rotation. The stillness allows distant sounds to travel, including a lift descending through a shaft and measured steps on a stairway. Dusk gathers where the corridor meets the wall, although the central path remains clean from constant movement. The archive has no golden frames, marble columns, or grand entrance, and its importance depends upon what has been kept rather than displayed. Here, memory is stored in ordinary containers beneath artificial light. The hidden state preserves itself through records, and the records preserve a version of the state that the capital tried to erase. District 13 gives the rebellion a physical base, a political rival, and a competing vision of order at the same time. Its underground settlement provides shelter, communications, food systems, hospitals, weapons, and technical facilities from which resistance can be coordinated. Its government under Olma offers an alternative center of authority for districts that have lived beneath capital rule. Its strict schedules and communal regulation suggest that liberation may still be organized through obedience. You see the difficulty clearly when the rebellion requires the same discipline that has sustained the hidden district for so long. Military knowledge protects the population, yet military habits shape it. Secrecy prevents destruction, yet secrecy limits accountability. Efficiency preserves food and energy, yet efficiency can reduce people to assignments and numbers. District 13 opposes the capital, but it does not stand outside the history of control. It carries another answer to the question of how a society should be ordered, and that answer contains its own danger. In a central passage, the ceiling drops slightly, making the space feel narrower as pipes and cables pass overhead. The light has a greenish cast that settles over the concrete and turns the walls almost colorless. A cleaning solution lingers in the air, mixed with the faint smell of powdered grain from a nearby distribution room. You hear several pairs of shoes approach together, their footsteps aligned in the same quiet rhythm. A soldier speaks in a low voice, and the words disappear before reaching the far end of the corridor. The floor remains smooth, cold, and dry beneath your feet. Behind one door, machinery produces a steady rotating sound, while behind another, a child's voice rises briefly and then becomes quiet. Life continues in separate compartments, connected by schedules and corridors. Nothing is wasted. Light, space, food, breath, or attention. The capital has kept District 13 outside public acknowledgement because admitting its survival would have altered the political balance long before the Second Rebellion began. A living district beneath the earth would have offered the oppressed a destination, a rumor with walls, and proof that resistance could preserve itself. The capital, therefore, treats absence as a method of rule, allowing citizens to believe that no alternative government remains. You follow the logic of concealment through broadcasts, school lessons, commemorations, and the carefully repeated language of national unity. Every official mention of the past strengthens the disappearance, while every silence protects the same arrangement. District 13 remains present in reality and absent in speech. When the rebellion becomes open, that division can no longer be maintained. The hidden district steps into history, not because its existence has changed, but because the capital's control over public knowledge has weakened. A ration line forms beneath a ceiling marked by old water stains, though the floor beneath it has been polished until no trace of dust remains. Metal containers wait in exact rows, and their lids reflect the pale fluorescent tubes above. The smell of warm grain drifts across the hall, dry and plain, with a sharper note from powdered drink prepared in large vessels. You hold a meal card between your fingers while the queue advances one place at a time. Nearby, a clock marks the official hour with a quiet electrical click. No one reaches across the counter before being called, and no serving is made without a record. The arrangement is calm, but its calm depends upon compliance. Food becomes both nourishment and administration, linking the body to District 13 authority. Beyond the hall, the next schedule is already waiting, carrying everyone towards work, instruction, inspection, or sleep. You follow the official map once more, but its authority has become less secure, because the blank where District 13 should be now contains a living contradiction. The map still shows 12 districts, yet the underground settlement demonstrates that political existence cannot be measured only by public recognition. District 13 has survived through secrecy, disciplined labor, controlled consumption, preserved military knowledge, and the careful maintenance of systems beneath the surface. Its population is small compared with the capital's millions, but its capabilities exceed what the official story allows. You see weapons guarded in storage, hospitals prepared for casualties, technical rooms supporting communication, and command chambers directing a rebellion. The district's visible size conceals the depth of its organization. Survival has not been passive. It has required planning repeated through every year of the hidden state. District 13 remains absent from the list of active districts, yet that absence has become the condition through which its power was preserved. Near the lower levels, the air carries the cool odor of stone and a faint warmth from electrical equipment. Light falls in narrow bands across the corridor, interrupted by the shadows of passing bodies. The walls seem to hold the day's accumulated sounds, returning footsteps, doors, carts, and voices as a soft, continuous murmur. A hospital vent releases a trace of disinfectant, and somewhere close by, powdered drink has been poured into a metal cup. You taste the dry residue of rationed grain after the meal, while your tongue remembers the absence of salt, fruit, and open air. The polished floor remains firm beneath you, guiding each step towards another room with another assigned purpose. Above the concrete, weather moves across unseen fields and rooftops. Below it, the settlement creates its own climate of light, regulation, labor, and waiting. The political problem of a hidden state becomes visible when you consider what District 13 must do after its concealment ends. It can resist the capital because it possesses a base, a population, weapons, military knowledge, and a command structure that has remained intact. It can also reproduce control in another form, because its society has been organized through strict schedules, communal regulation, ration cards, assigned clothing, and military discipline. You stand between two systems that disagree about spectacle and scarcity, but both understand the power of directing attention and behavior. The capital makes obedience attractive through color, luxury, and performance. District 13 makes obedience necessary through survival, security, and the constant arithmetic of limited resources. Neither arrangement leaves much room for an unregulated individual life. The hidden district can defeat the official government while carrying forward some of its habits. Its victory may therefore change the center of power without ending the question of power itself. At the edge of the settlement, a long corridor disappears beneath repeating arches of concrete. The fluorescent lighting thins towards the distance, becoming a chain of pale rectangles without any suggestion of sunset. Footsteps pass at different speeds, though the official rhythm of the district seems to draw them towards the same hours. A vent exhales cool air beside your face, carrying traces of dust and clean metal. From a sealed door comes the faint pulse of a generator, regular enough to resemble a heartbeat. Somewhere farther away, water moves through pipes, and the sound fades into the structure before you can locate it. The ceiling remains close, but the buried rooms continue beyond sight, layered beneath one another in a hidden geography. You walk through District 13 as through a memory made solid. It is concealed, disciplined, incomplete, and alive. District 13 has been absent from Panem's official list, public maps, and the capital's acknowledged present, yet it remains central to the future forming around the rebellion. Its survival reveals that the capital's official history has not contained the whole nation. Its underground spaces offer a physical base for resistance and a political rival to the government above. Its weapons and preserved knowledge give secrecy a military purpose, while its schedules and regulations reveal the cost of maintaining that purpose. You leave the command rooms and return towards the residential levels, passing hospitals, dining halls, technical chambers, and numbered doors beneath the earth. The sound of footsteps continues over polished floors, and the muted lights remain unchanged. Beyond the concrete, the capital still performs its history beneath ornamental roofs and shining avenues. Below, District 13 waits within another history, one that can resist the old order while quietly carrying its own form of control. You are standing in a district square after the dark days, where sun-warmed paving stones lie beneath a crowd made silent by instruction. The square is broad enough for carts, soldiers, and officials, though dust has gathered between the stones. Summer light rests pale and steadily upon the roofs, while a dry wind moves through the narrow streets beyond the gathering place. At the center, a registration table holds folded cards, ink, and a ledger opened beneath the capital seal. The microphone gives a dry scrape as an attendant adjusts its height, then leaves it trembling above the platform. Children stand in separate lines according to age, their shoulders close and their hands lowered carefully at their sides. Behind them, older relatives remain beneath the shade of walls and awnings, watching without conversation. The air carries faint smells of hot stone, wool, paper, and oil brought from distant kitchens. The ceremony is called the reaping, and its purpose is announced as plainly as a tax, although every arrangement gives it the shape of theater. One male tribute and one female tribute are required from each active district, selected from children between 12 and 18 years of age. The wording appears orderly, almost balanced, yet the order conceals a system designed to make poverty enter the square before the children do. A name may be entered once by birth and again through every accepted tessera, with each additional entry recorded upon the same folded card. Tesserae provide a year's supply of grain and oil in exchange for those extra chances, and the bargain is presented as assistance. The entries accumulate with age, so a child who accepts grain at 12 carries the mark into every later reaping. Older children from poor families therefore face greater exposure, while wealthier households can preserve the ordinary number of chances. The lottery is equal only in its language. Around the registration table, the folded cards form small pale heaps, each bearing a name, a district number, and the quiet arithmetic of hunger. Ink shines briefly where it has not dried, reflecting the hard brightness between the official's hands. A clerk presses each card flat with 2 fingers before placing it inside a glass bowl. The paper edges rasp together whenever the bowl moves, making a sound too delicate for the weight assigned to it. Grain dust clings to several children's sleeves, and thin oil stains darken the cuffs of others. The platform boards have been swept clean, though sand remains in the cracks. A uniformed guard stands beside the microphone, his boots planted on the warm paving stones. Somewhere behind the square, a shutter closes against the glare, and the brief wooden clap travels across the waiting crowd. No one speaks loudly enough to disturb the arrangement. A capital representative reads the rules from a prepared sheet, and the reaping becomes both an administrative procedure and a public lesson in obedience. The official names the rebellion, the destruction that followed, and the punishment imposed upon the districts after the dark days. The Hunger Games are established as an annual reminder that the capital has survived, that the districts have been measured, and that resistance carries a cost. The explanation is not delivered in anger, because anger might suggest that the war remains unfinished. Instead, the words are placed carefully into the square, where clerks, teachers, officers, and parents can repeat them. You hear the districts named in sequence, as though geography itself were being summoned to account. Then the official turns towards the bowl containing the girls' names. The silence narrows around you. A hand enters the glass, touches the folded cards, and withdraws with one selected future. The card unfolds beneath the microphone, and a child's name crosses the square before the child herself has moved. Her face changes first, while the rest of her remains still beneath the pale light. An attendant calls her forward, and the space between the crowd and the platform seems longer than its measured width. Her shoes make small sounds upon the paving stones, each step placed uncertainly beside the next. The mother behind her does not reach out, because the guards have taught everyone where the boundaries lie. The clerk writes beside the name, adding a final mark to a record already thick with entries. Another card is drawn for the male tribute, and the selected boy is found among the older children near the rear of the lines. His name has been entered more than once through tesserae, as many names have been. The reaping proceeds, and the square receives the result. The selected children are moved through a side entrance into a temporary room, where their hands are searched and their names checked against the cards. The room smells of paper warmed by sunlight and metal cooled beneath the shade. A narrow window admits a rectangle of brightness onto the floor, dividing the space into 2 colors. The microphone remains outside, its low hum passing through the wall whenever the attendant speaks. On a bench, relatives wait beneath a guard's eyes, their clothing carrying the dust of the square. A boy's sleeve has caught on a splinter, and a girl holds one loose thread between her fingers without pulling it. The registration cards are stacked again, corners are lined, while a clerk compares them with the ledger. Across the district, similar rooms are being used, similar bowls are being emptied, and similar names are becoming official entries. The process has begun to travel beyond the square. The selected children are called tributes, a word that converts their bodies into offerings and places the districts within a ritual of collective submission. You stand beside the platform as the first reaping ends, and the square gradually releases its crowd into streets that remain under guard. Relatives move slowly, carrying no explanation capable of softening the result. Children who were not selected return home, though their names remain in the bowls for another year. Those who accepted tesserae return, carrying grain and oil, knowing that the same provision has increased their future danger. The arrangement binds relief to risk, making the state present in every meal and every fear. A year passes, then another, and the reaping is held annually with the same numbered districts and official vocabulary. The punishment acquires a calendar. Once a punishment has a calendar, it can become a custom. In the first decade, the games themselves are less polished than the reaping, and the capital has not yet discovered how to make suffering appear coherent. The tributes are transported to the capital before the competition begins, carried away from their districts by trains whose routes place distance between the children and their original names. The journey is presented as necessary preparation, though it also separates each tribute from familiar streets, accents, and witnesses. In the capital, the children arrive not as neighbors or classmates, but as representatives of territories the government wishes to classify. Their clothing, speech, injuries, and silences are observed for meaning. A tribute becomes a political symbol before entering the arena, because every gesture can be interpreted as obedience, defiance, weakness, or promise. The first train doors open beneath unfamiliar roofs. The children descend into a city that has already decided what they are meant to signify. Train wheels strike the joints in the rail with a measured rhythm, carrying the tributes through dark country towards the bright center of power. The carriage rocks gently beneath them, and the lamps above the seats sway whenever the train changes direction. Outside, fields appear in fragments between banks of shadow, then disappear behind tunnels, embankments, and smoke. The windows reflect small faces, dark uniforms, and pale lines of overhead light. Someone has placed food upon a table, though the plates remain untouched for long intervals. The smell of iron enters whenever the doors between carriages open, mingling with boiled cloth, coal dust, and the faint sweetness of fruit. At each rail joint, the wheels produce a brief metallic strike, repeating beneath every thought. The sound is neither fast nor slow. It carries the children onward while the districts recede behind them. The early games are depicted in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes as a rough and unpopular broadcast spectacle, with little resemblance to the later national ritual. The audience is small and inconsistent, gathering in rooms where the image is uncertain and the sound crowded by static. The arena is controlled and designed by the capital, but its early presentation does not conceal the practical nature of the enclosure. There are walls, cameras, weapons, and prepared spaces, yet no fully formed story explains why anyone beyond the district should watch. The games are punishment first and entertainment only by aspiration. Capital officials search for methods that might hold attention, while educational and political institutions begin treating the event as a problem of public meaning. Dr. Gall is associated with this ideological development, as are institutions that train young citizens to interpret violence through theories of order, nature, and authority. The arena becomes a classroom without admitting that it teaches. A broadcast room fills with static and cigarette smoke, while technicians lean towards screens showing broken images from the arena. The room is narrow, warm, and poorly ventilated, with cables descending from the ceiling in looping black bundles. Ash rests in shallow dishes beside control panels whose small lights blink without pattern. Voices arrive through the speakers in fragments, sometimes clear enough to identify a tribute, sometimes lost beneath electrical noise. Tobacco settles into curtains, collars, and the papers stacked beside the technicians. A glass tumbler leaves a damp ring near a switch labeled with a district number. Beyond the walls, capital streets continue their evening traffic, unaware or briefly curious. Within the room, attention rises and falls according to the quality of the picture. No one yet knows that irregular attention can be gathered into habit. The 10th Hunger Games includes tributes selected from the districts after the war's political order is established, revealing a government searching for durable forms. The rebellion has ended, the districts have been assigned their places, and the capital's authority no longer depends upon immediate military movement alone. The games are expected to repeat the settlement in public, although their crude beginnings have not supplied a convincing reason to watch. Tributes enter the arena carrying district identities imposed through announcements, uniforms, and records. Their deaths demonstrate the capital's reach, while their survival may display its generosity or cleverness. The 10th event belongs to an intermediate period, when the political order is firm, but the ritual remains unfinished. The institution exists, although its emotional machinery is still being assembled. Dr. Gall and the surrounding educational and political structures help shape the arguments that later make the games appear inevitable. Below the broadcast room, the arena waits beneath artificial light, its surfaces selected to suggest danger before any tribute has crossed them. Concrete holds the day's stored warmth in some places and returns it as dull heat through the soles of your shoes. Other surfaces remain cold, carrying moisture from hidden pipes or underground chambers. Painted signs indicate corridors with no public purpose, except to guide cameras and handlers. A metal gate rests inside a groove, ready to open when the schedule requires movement. The walls show marks from construction, repairs, and hurried attempts to make utility resemble design. Above the enclosure, lenses turn slowly within their housings. Every angle has been considered, although not every result can be controlled. The arena belongs to the capital because its boundaries, timing, and image are controlled there. Its meaning, however, is still being tested. The first tributes arrive in the capital as frightened children, then are arranged as evidence that the districts can be made visible, comparable, and punishable. You pass through a receiving hall where attendants record measurements, origins, injuries, and family details beside the official district numbers. The children receive garments that distinguish them from one another while making each group part of a larger display. Their accents are noticed, their expressions assessed, and their ordinary histories reduced to material suitable for announcement. Some are kept apart, while others are placed together because contrast may create a stronger impression. The capital has not yet developed the elaborate narrative framing of later decades, but the principle is already present. A tribute is no longer only a child taken from a square. The tribute is also a district carried into the capital, a warning given a face, and a possible story waiting for a voice. The receiving hall has polished floors that return the image of passing figures, although the reflections break whenever a boot crosses a seam. Cool air moves from concealed vents along the walls, carrying wax, starch, and the faint mineral odor of freshly washed stone. Brass fixtures hold lamps beneath frosted glass, and the light settles evenly upon everyone who enters. A clerk's pen scratches against a form, pauses, and scratches again when a spelling requires correction. Nearby, a folded coat slides from a hook and touches the floor before an attendant retrieves it. The children's belongings are placed into numbered trays, where familiar objects become evidence rather than comfort. A door opens at the end of the corridor, releasing warmer air from another department. The sound of train wheels still seems present in memory, although the rails lie far beyond the capital's walls. The capital gradually learns that the games need more than an arena, because an enclosure alone cannot persuade a population to keep returning. Presentation gathers around the violence, first through clearer announcements, and later through prepared appearances, distinctive costumes, and assigned interpretations. Sponsorship develops as a practical means of directing food, medicine, and equipment towards tributes whom audiences have come to recognize. Narrative framing gives each child a position within a story, whether that story describes courage, cruelty, innocence, loyalty, or betrayal. These improvements do not lessen the punishment. They make it easier to remember and discuss. Annual repetition allows details from one games to influence expectations for the next. The capital discovers that a tribute scene before the arena can be followed inside it. Once a face is connected to a district, a family, and a particular manner of speaking, death can be presented as an event rather than an administrative conclusion. In the preparation rooms, cloth, pins, brushes, and trays of pigments surround the children with textures designed for an audience they have never met. Wool scratches against the back of one neck, while smoother fabric lies cool across another shoulder. Hands adjust collars, straighten hems, and remove dust brought from the train. Brushes move across cheeks with careful pressure, leaving colors selected to suggest a harvest, a mineral seam, a forest, or a manufacturing district. The room smells of starch, heated metal, powder, and damp wool drying near a radiator. Beyond the partition, a technician tests a speaker, and a low tone rises before falling into silence. The children remain seated while adults discuss their appearance in quiet professional voices. Every surface seems to instruct the body where to rest, how to turn, and when to become still. The annual reaping remains the point at which the system enters each district most directly, because every household must prepare for the possibility of a name being drawn. In the days before the ceremony, children between 12 and 18 are counted again, and families calculate the grain and oil that may be obtained through tessery. A year's supply can prevent illness, preserve a younger child, or keep a household alive through a failed harvest. The price is paid in additional entries, which remain cumulative with age. A 12-year-old who accepts tessery begins with increased exposure, while a 16-year-old may carry several years of accumulated risk. The arrangement is part of the punishment, ensuring that hunger helps fill the bowls. By the time the reaping returns, poverty has already placed its signature beside many names. One male tribute and one female tribute are then chosen, and the district is required to witness its own loss. Rainwater rests in shallow depressions between the paving stones after an earlier storm, reflecting grey roofs and the straight legs of the officials. The crowd stands beneath a damp sky that has not yet decided whether to clear. Coats hold the smell of wet wool, while the paper cards on the registration table curl slightly at their edges. The microphone gives another dry scrape as it is raised above the platform, and the sound travels sharply through the square. A drain carries a thin stream towards the street, collecting grit, leaves, and one small piece of torn cloth. The guards' uniforms darken at the shoulders, although their posture does not alter. Children shift their weight without moving their feet far enough to attract notice. Somewhere beyond the buildings, a bell marks the hour, and the crowd remains arranged beneath it. The reaping repeats until the punishment requires no explanation, because the ceremony itself has become familiar enough to stand for the history of rebellion. Names are read, cards are unfolded, and children cross the same measured space beneath the eyes of their neighbors. Families learn how to speak in lowered voices, preserve food for the evening, and wait beside official doors. The districts learn that resistance can be remembered through a schedule, with each annual date carrying the authority of law. The capital learns that a ceremony can place fear inside ordinary time, where it becomes difficult to separate from schooling, harvests, work, and family life. The selection remains called the reaping, a word associated with fields and seasonal labor, although the harvest now consists of lives. Every year adds another layer of expectation. Every additional entry through tessery enlarges the bowl's reach. In the train carriage, the rails carry the tributes towards the capital, and the repeated strike of the wheels gives their separation a rhythm that cannot be negotiated. Darkness covers the fields outside, leaving only occasional lamps beside crossings and stations. Each light passes across the carriage windows, briefly illuminating faces before returning them to reflection. The seats tremble with the train's movement, and the metal fittings grow cold beneath resting hands. A cup slides a fraction across the table whenever the carriage tilts. The air smells of coal, leather, and food prepared but scarcely touched. At the far end, a door opens and closes with a soft pneumatic sigh. The wheels meet another rail joint, producing a bright metallic note that joins the long sequence behind you. The capital is approaching, although its roofs remain hidden beyond the night. The journey changes the children because it gives the capital time to remove them from their original surroundings before the competition begins. They are no longer seen within a district square, among neighbors who can identify their families and remember their childhoods. They are transported as official representatives, watched by attendants, measured by technicians, and prepared for a controlled public image. Their fear is made legible through clothing, interviews, posture, and silence. A tribute can be presented as evidence of district savagery, innocence, strength, or obedience. Political symbolism settles upon ordinary gestures. Looking away may be called defiance, while speaking softly may be described as submission. The capital begins to understand that spectators do not require complete truth. They require a pattern that makes the event easier to follow. The child becomes the symbol, and the symbol becomes available for use. Steam gathers along the platform roof where the capital train arrives, softening the lamps into pale circles above the waiting attendants. Water drips from the carriage steps and darkens the stone beneath them. The air carries hot metal, wet soot, and the sweetness of pastries being sold beyond a glass partition. Porters move quietly around trunks and equipment, their shoes tapping across the platform at uneven intervals. A loudspeaker releases a burst of static before naming the arriving train, then falls silent. The children descend one at a time, blinking beneath the brighter lamps. Their district clothing appears plain beside the station's polished surfaces, although every garment has been selected for a purpose. A guard's hand rests near the rail, and an attendant holds a clipboard close against the damp air. The capital receives them as material for an event. The early games remain unpopular because punishment alone does not create sustained attention, and the first broadcasts offer little reason for distant citizens to remain near the screen. Images break apart, commentators hesitate, and the arena's unfamiliar geography provides no stable structure for viewing. The audience cannot easily distinguish one tribute from another or understand why one action should matter more than the next. Broadcasts are shown in selected rooms, schools, and public buildings, while attendance rises and falls according to curiosity, obligation, and reception quality. Small crowds gather, then drift away before the event concludes. The spectacle has not yet acquired the national ritual later generations will inherit. Even the capital must learn how to watch. Through experiments in presentation, sponsorship, and narrative, the institutions surrounding the games transform disordered violence into anticipated scenes. In a broadcast room, cigarette smoke hangs beneath the ceiling while static crawls across the screens, turning the arena into pale interruptions. A technician wipes one monitor with the edge of his sleeve, leaving a cloudy crescent near the lower corner. Another adjusts a dial until a tribute appears, vanishes, and returns with the face divided by horizontal lines. The room is warmer than the corridors outside, carrying tobacco, dust, hot insulation, and the bitter trace of burnt coffee. Papers covered in names lie beside lists of sponsors, equipment, and scheduled announcements. A telephone rings once, then stops before anyone answers. Through the wall, machinery gives a low, continuous vibration. The room remains awake because someone must decide what the public will see. Attention is being assembled from fragments, one image and one explanation at a time. Dr. Gall's influence belongs to this stage of development, when the capital's educational and political institutions begin giving the games a theory as well as a timetable. The arena is treated as a demonstration of human behavior, while the tributes are discussed as examples within arguments about order, violence, fear, and control. Students and officials are encouraged to view the competition as more than a consequence of war. It becomes a lesson in what the capital claims to know about the districts and about itself. Such interpretations allow the games to move beyond revenge. They create a language through which punishment can be defended, studied, and refined. The yearly event is connected to classrooms, offices, laboratories, and government chambers, where its methods are reviewed. The child in the arena is thus surrounded by institutions long before the first weapon is raised. The spectacle grows through administration. In a classroom linked to the capital's political structures, chalk dust settles across a board where district names have been arranged beneath carefully drawn headings. The room smells of wax, paper, and the faint mineral scent of rain entering through a high window. Desks stand in rows, their surfaces marked by knives, ink, and years of restless hands. A map hangs at the front, its colors clean and unweathered, with the districts placed at measured distances from the capital. Beneath it, a small radio gives a quiet hiss between announcements. The teacher's pointer rests against the board, leaving a pale line where it touches the chalk. Outside, water moves through gutters and down stone steps. Inside, the children listen while abstract words are attached to living places. The lesson continues with the calmness of a routine exercise. The capital gradually discovers that sponsorship can turn spectatorship into participation, because viewers pay closer attention when they believe their choices may alter a tribute's chances. Food, medicine, clothing, and tools begin to carry meanings beyond their practical use. A gift can suggest admiration, pity, calculation, or ownership, and the audience is invited to recognize each possibility. Tributes become more carefully introduced, their district origins presented as parts of a larger narrative that can be supported or rejected. The games acquire elaborate presentation over time, although the early decade contains only rough experiments and uncertain results. Each refinement makes the event easier to remember. Each repeated symbol gives spectators a way to speak about violence without confronting its full disorder. The capital learns to package fear as an event people are expected to watch, discuss, and await. The packaging does not conceal the fear completely. It makes the fear durable. The city streets outside the arena carry evening rain along their gutters, while posters and notices dry beneath covered arcades. Ink runs slightly on one announcement where water has entered beneath the paper. A portrait of a tribute has been fixed beside the entrance to a public hall, its edges curling away from the stone. Lamps glow through mist, and carriage wheels send shallow fans of water towards the curbs. Beneath an awning, two attendants discuss the evening schedule over steaming cups. The smell of wet pavement mingles with coal smoke from a nearby vent. Behind the hall's closed doors, seats are arranged in rows, each facing a screen. The audience will arrive according to no single command, yet expectation has already been placed before them. Rain continues falling upon the city. The first reaping in the district square has become the beginning of a long chain, linking hunger, selection, transport, preparation, broadcast, and death. The chain strengthens whenever a child accepts tessery, because grain and oil make the system appear to offer help. It grows longer with age, as cumulative entries increase the exposure of children who remain poor across several years. It becomes more visible when selected tributes are transported to the capital and renamed as representatives. It gains weight through the annual calendar, which places the reaping beside familiar seasonal duties. The games begin as punishment after the dark days, yet they become an institution capable of reproducing itself. Administrative records support the ceremony, ceremonies support the broadcasts, broadcasts support sponsorship, and sponsorship supports renewed attention. The capital does not need every citizen to admire the games. It needs enough citizens to expect them. The district square cools after sunset, and the stones release the warmth stored beneath the silent feet of those who gathered there. The platform stands empty beneath the microphone, whose metal stem reflects a narrow line of fading light. Folded cards have been returned to their boxes, and ink has thickened around the rim of its bottle. A few grains remain scattered near the edge of the paving, bright against the darkening surface. The guards leave in pairs, their footsteps passing through the side streets before becoming indistinct. From a nearby kitchen comes the smell of oil warming in a pan, followed by the heavier scent of grain being cooked. The crowd has gone indoors, carrying the reaping into rooms where names will be repeated softly. Night settles over the district, and the annual institution waits for another year. In the capital, the arena lights remain awake after the first audience has departed, illuminating a space designed to hold both children and interpretation. The walls keep the day's heat in their concrete, while metal rails cool beneath the handler's gloves. Cameras continue their slow movements, following empty corridors and unoccupied platforms. A maintenance worker gathers fragments from the floor and places them into a shallow tray. Somewhere above, a commentator reviews phrases that may be useful for the next broadcast. The arena is quiet except for ventilation, distant machinery, and the occasional click of a light changing intensity. Its emptiness does not make it harmless. It makes the design easier to inspect. The capital is learning where to place entrances, how to direct movement, and which details might allow a distant audience to remain present. The 10th Hunger Games, therefore, stands at a threshold, established by political order, but not yet perfected as national ceremony. The tributes have been selected from districts whose boundaries and obligations are treated as permanent. They are transported to the capital, displayed before the competition, and placed inside an arena controlled and designed by the government. Their suffering is broadcast unevenly, with small and inconsistent audiences compared with the later crowds that gather across Panem. Educational and political institutions examine the event, while Dr. Gall remains associated with the ideological work that gives it an explanation. Presentation, sponsorship, and narrative framing develop gradually, each edition making the games more legible and more difficult to ignore. What begins as rough punishment becomes an organized annual institution. The reaping remains its quiet entrance, held beneath the same official language in every active district. At dawn, the rails shine with a thin layer of moisture, and the first trains move through the outskirts while their wheels strike the joints in steady sequence. The sound passes between warehouses, over bridges, and beneath stone arches where the air smells of rust and rain. Steam gathers briefly around the engines, then loosens into the pale morning. Workers unlock doors along the platforms, carrying lamps that fade as daylight strengthens. A newspaper lies folded on a bench, its ink dark beneath a headline about the games. Nearby, a paper cup has tipped onto its side, leaving a small brown stain beside the rail. The city begins its ordinary movement around an extraordinary institution. The trains continue towards the capital, and the repeated metallic rhythm carries names already taken from their districts. The capital learns that fear becomes more durable when it is packaged as an event people are expected to watch. The package contains a date, a square, a bowl, 2 names, a train, an arena, and a broadcast that can improve from one year to the next. It contains grain and oil offered through tessery, with additional entries stored as the hidden cost of survival. It contains children between 12 and 18, selected as tributes and transported until their personal histories become political symbols. It contains Dr. Gall's theories, institutional lessons, technical adjustments, sponsors, costumes, and stories prepared for distant audiences. Each element gives the next one a place to rest. By the time the games acquire their later grandeur, the First Reaping has already taught the districts how to stand still. The stones cool beneath an empty square, and the microphone waits for another name. The stones cool beneath an empty square, and the microphone waits for another name. You remain there as morning changes into afternoon, while the silence of the reaping square travels through wires towards the capital. Beyond the district streets, Television screens brighten behind drawn curtains, in station kitchens, public halls, schoolrooms, and guarded offices. The image arrives polished and steady, carrying distant faces into rooms that smell of coal, boiled grain, and tired clothing. At the Capitol, the same silence is softened beneath hot studio lamps. Powder settles over frightened skin, while polished fabric gathers around narrow shoulders. You are moved through a corridor of mirrors as assistants adjust collars, smooth hair, and place each tribute beneath the approved light. A camera clicks somewhere beyond the curtain, followed by the measured rise of applause from an illuminated sign. The noise appears warm, almost welcoming, although the children standing within it can still feel the restraints hidden beneath their ceremonial clothes. The games are broadcast across Panem because a private execution would punish only the body placed before the blade. A televised execution carries the Capitol's voice into every household and turns death into a shared national appointment. Every district is required to watch the televised event, whether the screen hangs above a factory floor or flickers inside a crowded administrative building. Curtains may be drawn, lamps extinguished, and heads lowered, yet the image remains an order. The Capitol does not permit the districts to look away from the children chosen among them. Through the broadcast, grief becomes visible, measurable, and carefully arranged beneath the Capitol seal. From the studio balcony, you can see banks of lamps burning white against dark walls, with cables running beneath the floor like black roots. Technicians move quietly between consoles, while a red indicator glows above the main camera. Perfume hangs backstage beside the sharper scent of powder and hot metal, mingling with the faint sweetness of polished fabric. Your shoes pass over a smooth floor, and each step returns as a small, softened echo. The host's voice enters the room before his face appears, rounded by practice and carried through hidden speakers. Caesar Flickerman, associated with the games in the original trilogy, turns every pause into something gracious and deliberate. You sit before the camera while the host asks about home, family, skill, fear, and longing. Behind him, the Capitol colors gleam like lacquered fruit, and the applause sign waits for its appointed moment. Each tribute is introduced by name, district, and personal story, so that an unknown child can be followed from a sofa. A face becomes a name becomes a history, and a history becomes a reason to keep watching. The Capitol presents the games as punishment, entertainment, and a lesson in obedience, arranging those meanings so neatly that they seem to belong together. Violence is given music, ceremony, commentary, and a timetable. You hear the polished phrase repeated across the studio, describing honor where there is fear and tradition where there is compulsion. The words pass smoothly over the children's expressions, allowing viewers to remain comfortable inside an official explanation. In Capitol apartments, citizens consume the games as a public spectacle rather than experiencing the district's poverty directly. Cushioned chairs, bright kitchens, and abundant tables place distance between the viewers and the hunger visible beyond their screens. Their rooms carry the scent of warm bread, sweet drinks, and expensive flowers, while the districts appear in carefully selected fragments. A cracked wall may be shown, though the deeper arithmetic of deprivation remains outside the frame. The tribute's personal stories give the Capitol a way to replace unease with attachment. A viewer may admire a strong swimmer, pity a frightened child, or cheer for a pair whose history seems shaped for romance. During the interviews, individual children are turned into characters in a national drama, each receiving a role that can be remembered when the arena opens. A quiet tribute may become mysterious, while a confident one becomes dangerous. The studio audience applauds beneath painted stars, and the cameras glide across bright faces arranged in attentive rows. You can feel the lamps warming your cheeks, even while the room beyond the lens remains carefully invisible. Sponsors enter this drama through gifts that possess both practical and theatrical value. Food, medicine, or equipment may reach a tribute during the games, yet every gift begins as a decision made by someone watching. The sponsor system makes survival partly dependent on a tribute's public image, because sympathy must gather before it can become material assistance. A child who appears memorable, brave, vulnerable, or desirable may receive more than one who disappears quietly. The economy of attention settles over the arena like another atmosphere, invisible but powerful. Every gesture can become an appeal, every wound can become evidence, and every silence can be interpreted by distant observers. In the capital, accounts are opened, opinions are exchanged, and gifts are selected beneath the glow of television screens. The value of a tribute becomes entangled with the story attached to that tribute. A commentator's smooth voice describes the odds while the audience watches hands tremble, shelters form, and alliances shift. The voice makes violence orderly, giving sudden bloodshed a sequence that can be understood from a comfortable chair. When the arena falls silent, the commentary does not necessarily stop. It waits above the quiet, naming possibilities, recalling earlier behavior, and teaching viewers what kind of moment they have been given. The game makers supervise the enclosure from rooms filled with instruments, screens, maps, and hidden machinery. Their work allows the arena to remain physical enough for danger and artificial enough for continuous narrative control. The arena is both a physical enclosure and a broadcast set, built to contain bodies while presenting images. Its hills, lakes, forests, tunnels, and ruins are arranged as scenery with consequences. Through concealed systems, the game makers can alter the arena environment to shape the action. Weather, fire, creatures, and terrain become instruments of pacing, pressure, and forced encounter. Night fog may gather where the cameras need mystery, veiling the ground while small lights tremble in the distance. Artificial fire can rise suddenly from the earth, bright enough to drive exhausted children towards one another. Beneath the soil, an electronic pulse moves through hidden machinery, regulating doors, cameras, sensors, and devices that remain beyond the tribute's understanding. The arena seems natural only until the landscape begins answering an unseen command. You stand beneath dark branches while cold mist moves between your ankles, and the faint hum of machinery continues below the roots. Somewhere beyond the trees, a lens follows your movement without blinking. The game makers can close one path and open another, send danger across a valley, or make a quiet refuge impossible. Such changes preserve the appearance of chance while placing the action within a designed rhythm. Commentators and presenters translate this rhythm into an orderly story for viewers, explaining motives that may never have existed. Their voices gather scattered events into chapters, turning confusion into suspense and suffering into a sequence of meanings. The broadcast requires constant interpretation because a silent body cannot explain its own importance. A presenter supplies context, an interviewer supplies personality, and a camera supplies the illusion of intimacy. Caesar Flickerman's polished presence belongs to this machinery of translation, appearing friendly enough to make cruelty familiar. His questions create pauses in which a tribute's expression can be examined, remembered, and sold to the national audience. The same face that trembles during the interviews may later appear beneath rain, smoke, or blood. The Capitol preserves this continuity carefully, allowing spectators to compare the living child with the character prepared beforehand. Backstage, polished cloth brushes against polished cloth as assistants carry costumes towards the waiting cameras. Powder gathers along collars and eyelashes, while perfume lingers beneath the hot lamps like a pleasant veil over dread. The applause sign flashes, and the audience responds with practiced delight. You hear hundreds of hands striking together, though the sound has less freedom than the children standing beneath the studio lights. The Capitol's technological superiority is displayed through the broadcast itself, as much as through the machines controlling the arena. Clear images, rapid transitions, elaborate lighting, and distant communication demonstrate power without explaining its cost. Every district sees that the capital can watch everywhere, speak everywhere, and alter the world inside the screen. The message requires no argument because the machinery performs authority in real time. A screen in a district square carries the same images as a private capital salon, though the rooms surrounding those images possess entirely different lives. The shared broadcast creates equality only in exposure, never in comfort. In one place, a family watches with rationed water beside them, while elsewhere a table is cleared for desserts during the same scene. The image joins these rooms without allowing their conditions to meet. The games therefore travel outward as punishment and inward as entertainment, with the direction of feeling controlled by distance. District viewers are reminded of submission, while capital viewers are offered the pleasure of superiority. The ceremonies before the games establish this arrangement through costumes, processions, interviews, and public counting. Each tribute is displayed before becoming vulnerable, as though visibility itself were a form of honor. You pass beneath banners, while cameras follow the movement of your shoulders and the turn of your face. The crowd rises in color around you, and the polished fabric of the procession reflects every lamp. Ceremony gives the capital time to name the event before the event begins. It defines the children as representatives, competitors, symbols, and entertainment, while reducing the word victim to something unspoken. The tribute parade transforms fear into pageantry, allowing the audience to admire craftsmanship while overlooking the bodies wearing it. Fire, metal, feathers, and embroidered cloth make the children appear larger than their ordinary lives. In the studio, the host speaks of courage, preparation, and destiny, while the cameras search for expressions that can survive repetition. A private grief becomes useful once it can be placed inside a public story. The sponsor economy deepens after these appearances because the audience now has faces to remember and preferences to defend. Sympathy gathers around certain tributes, then begins moving through the capital as food, medicine, or equipment. A sponsor's gift may arrive as bread during weakness, ointment after injury, or a tool when a locked path must be opened. The object is practical, yet its arrival also confirms that the tribute story remains valuable. The knowledge of possible assistance changes behavior inside the arena. A tribute may preserve an image of tenderness, perform confidence before a camera, or protect another person, because compassion has become strategically visible. The capital watches these performances from couches, balconies, dining rooms, and private viewing galleries. Viewers may call the children admirable or foolish, while the machinery measures attention through requests, wagers, and gifts. Night gathers over the arena, and fog settles between artificial trees with a pale, manufactured softness. The darkness appears deep, although hidden cameras continue recording the smallest movement. A sudden flame throws orange light across the ground, revealing stones, roots, and frightened faces. The heat touches the skin from a distance, while the electronic pulse beneath the earth maintains its steady rhythm. The commentator's voice floats over the silence, explaining what the flames mean and where the threatened children may go. His calm delivery turns panic into a problem with boundaries and possible outcomes. Within the control room, maps change color as doors close, creatures move, and weather systems answer instructions. The game makers do not merely observe the games, because they continuously compose the conditions under which observation occurs. Terrain becomes argument when a forest offers concealment, a river offers danger, or a plain exposes every movement. The designed landscape teaches the audience to read geography as fate. A tribute survival may depend on finding shelter, while the broadcast depends on ensuring that shelter cannot remain complete. The arena must offer secrecy briefly, then remove it before attention drifts elsewhere. You crouch beneath rough stone while damp air gathers along your sleeves, hearing distant movement through the grass. Somewhere above the darkness, a camera receives the image and sends it outward. In the districts, children watch the same darkness and learn that the arena has no boundary they can reach. The screen compresses distance, yet it does not create escape, because every visible path belongs to the capital. The games teach obedience through repetition, presenting each season as evidence that resistance ends inside the same enclosure. The lesson is strongest when it appears predictable and weakest when the spectacle produces an unexpected meaning. Capital citizens may believe they are consuming a contest because rules, scores, personalities, and commentary make the event resemble sport. The districts understand more clearly that the contest begins with unequal power and ends with sanctioned death. Yet the broadcast cannot control every interpretation it creates. A gesture can escape its intended meaning. A friendship can become inconvenient, and affection can gather beyond the script prepared by the game makers. The ceremonies after the games attempt to repair this uncertainty through crowns, speeches, medical displays, and carefully staged reunions. Victory is presented as proof of the capital's generosity rather than evidence of the victor's endurance. Death is interpreted through silence, memorial language, and the removal of bodies from the frame. The cameras decide how long grief remains visible before the narrative turns towards celebration. You stand beneath bright lights after exhaustion has become part of your appearance, while attendants arrange fabric around injuries and powder the hollows beneath your eyes. Applause rises again, measured and obedient. The victor's story is then carried through interviews, tours, portraits, and repeated accounts of the arena. Each retelling narrows the range of possible meanings, making survival appear grateful, entertaining, and politically harmless. The capital needs an audience because the games are not only an instrument of killing, they are an instrument of interpretation, requiring witnesses who can be taught what death signifies. Without viewers, the arena would remain an enclosed murder site, and the capital's technological achievement would lose its public evidence. With viewers, the same violence becomes ceremony, lesson, spectacle, and proof of reach. The audience also creates a field of possible sympathy that the capital cannot completely command. When viewers attach themselves to a tribute, their feelings may begin exceeding the role assigned by official commentary. Katniss and Peter reveal this danger during the 74th Games, when their public story develops beyond the capital's intended limits. Their bond becomes difficult to separate from the audience's emotional investment. The capital expects the games to end with one surviving tribute, because a single victor confirms the authority of the rules. Katniss and Peter's refusal to complete the 74th Games according to that intended ending exposes the political danger of live spectacle. Their threatened double death turns the arena's central command against itself. The cameras carry their defiance across Panem, making the capital witness an act it cannot quietly remove. For a moment, the broadcast no longer teaches obedience in the desired manner. It shows that the rules require cooperation, that the audience can understand a contradiction, and that spectacle may carry rebellion farther than a hidden protest. Artificial fire glows against the night fog, while machinery pulses beneath the ground. The familiar devices of control remain active, yet their images begin to suggest something beyond the game maker's design. Commentators can explain a wound, a rule, or a sacrifice, but they cannot always determine what viewers feel. A smooth voice may cover sudden silence, although silence itself can become a message. The capital responds by returning to ceremony, interpretation, and control. Names are repeated, districts are displayed, costumes are adjusted, and the broadcast is guided towards a conclusion that seems stable. Still, Katniss and Peter remain visible together, and their visibility has altered the meaning of the arena. The audience has seen not only competition, but cooperation directed against the ending imposed upon them. The reaping square now seems very far away, although the same names continue travelling through the national system. Katniss, Peter, District 12, and the 74th games become phrases repeated across rooms that never meet. You can imagine the empty square after the cameras leave, with dust settling around the platform and a microphone standing above the stones. The capital story has moved onwards, but the ground remembers a different beginning. In the television studio, lamps continue burning over polished faces, and technicians wait beside silent panels. Perfume, powder, fabric, and warm metal remain in the air after the applause has faded. Across Panem, screens darken one by one, leaving pale reflections in windows and the faint blue glow of sleeping rooms. The broadcast has ended for the night, though its images remain within the people who watched. The capital needed an audience to make power visible, convert execution into narrative, and surround fear with enough beauty to be consumed. Yet an audience also receives meanings the capital cannot fully own. The arena is there for enclosure and stage, weapon and broadcast set, landscape and argument. Its hidden machinery can command fire, fog, creatures and terrain, but it cannot guarantee the obedience of every watching mind. You remain beneath the quiet sky, while the last artificial light withdraws across the distant hills. The electronic pulse fades under the earth, and the silence becomes less like an ending than a waiting place. You leave the arena behind and travel northward through a country arranged by labor, where every road, railway, fence, and guarded station directs the fruits of one district towards another. Coal smoke is caught in the winter air above District 12, and the valley holds it beneath the dark shoulders of the hills. Around you, roofs are blackened, paths are muddy, and the mine whistle fades across a grey valley as the morning shift disappears underground. Frost rests on wooden steps, while thin smoke rises from chimneys that provide warmth without clearing the bitter air. The ground near the mine is powdered with coal dust, and the stones beneath your boots feel gritty and cold. Somewhere beyond the houses, a wagon creaks towards the loading yard, carrying the mountain's weight in rough, heavy pieces. The smell is of ash, iron, damp wool, and bread being divided carefully at a small kitchen table. Winter light reaches the valley late and leaves it early. Coal is District 12 principal industry, and the mine gives the district its place within Panem's wider machinery. You see fuel lifted from the earth, sorted, weighed, and sealed into wagons, yet the wealth carried away remains distant from the families living beside the shafts. The children of District 12 grow close to dangerous workplaces, learning the sound of machinery before they understand the names of its parts. Around you, men and women descend into narrow darkness, while the capital receives the energy released by their labor. The railway carries coal away through controlled gates, past armed peacekeepers, and towards districts that transform it into heat, motion, and electricity. Each wagon makes the connection visible, while the unequal distribution of its value remains quiet. You follow the railway eastward, where the land opens into the extensive fields of District 11. The air is wider here, carrying the dry scent of straw and turned soil across long furrows that seem to continue beneath the pale sky. Rows of crops lie in measured bands, green in one season and gold in another, while orchards gather their shadows beneath the trees. Dust gathers along the road and settles on your sleeves, and the warmth of the earth rises through the soles of your shoes. A distant cart moves slowly beside a field, its wheels pressing dark marks into the track. Birds pass above the irrigation channels, and the water reflects a thin strip of cloud. The fields are quiet except for the rustle of stems, the creak of harness leather, and the occasional call traveling between workers. District 11 is associated with agriculture, and its extensive fields supply food far beyond the district's boundaries. Grain, fruit, vegetables, and other harvests enter a system where abundance is carefully measured before reaching the people who produced it. You stand beside workers whose hands are stained by soil and whose bodies remain exposed to heat, rain, and the demands of a long growing season. The harvest becomes visible in markets and rations, but the labor behind it is made ordinary. Peacekeepers regulate movement along the roads, while fences divide fields from settlements and turn the countryside into a series of permitted passages. Even food, which appears to belong to everyone, travels according to authority. From District 11, the railway bends towards the coast and reaches District 4, where the smell of salt arrives before the harbour comes into view. Wet nets lie in dark heaps beside the quay, their ropes shining beneath the morning light, and the stones beneath you are slick with seawater. Around you, boats knock softly against their moorings, carrying baskets of fish beneath patched canvas. Gulls circle above the roofs, their calls thinning in the wind, while brine clings to the rails and leaves a sharp taste on your lips. Harbour workers move with practiced care, lifting crates whose wooden sides have been darkened by years of spray. Seaweed gathers between the cobbles, and small pools reflect the grey sky. Beyond the breakwater, the water rises and falls with a patient, heavy rhythm. District 4 is associated with fishing and seafood, so the sea becomes another source of food and another workplace governed by schedules, quotas, and inspections. You watch the catch leave the quay, packed in ice and sent inland by regulated railways. The district depends upon timber from elsewhere for boats and crates, upon metal for hooks and engines, and upon electricity generated beyond the coast. Its apparent independence is therefore only one part of a larger dependence. Unauthorized trade is treated as theft from the system, even when the traded object was gathered or caught by the person holding it. Peacekeepers can punish hunting, theft, and exchange outside the approved channels. You travel inland again, entering District 7 beneath tall, dim trees where the ground is softened by needles and covered with fine sawdust. The forest closes around the road, and daylight becomes greenish, filtered through branches that move slowly above your head. Resin warms the air with a deep, clean scent, while fallen bark rests in curled strips beside the tracks. Somewhere among the trunks, an axe strikes wood with a measured report, followed by the low groan of a tree shifting under its own weight. Sawdust lies beneath your boots in pale drifts, soft at the surface and packed hard below. Birds remain hidden in the canopy, and distant machinery sounds muffled by moss, trunks, and damp earth. The forest seems immense, though every path has been surveyed. District 7 is associated with lumber and forestry, and its trees become beams, paper, furniture, packing crates, and structures through which other districts are administered. You see the forest converted into straight boards, numbered loads, and stacked walls. Workers live close to the cutting grounds, where falling timber and heavy machinery create daily danger. Their homes stand within reach of the mills, but the wealth created by the forests travels outward with the railway. Timber from District 7 helps carry the grain of District 11, the seafood of District 4, and the coal of District 12. Materials bind the districts together, while checkpoints prevent their people from moving together. At the edge of the forest, fences follow the railway line with a precision that makes geography feel less like open land and more like a collection of rooms with locked doors. Your route then reaches District 9, where grain production has shaped the horizon into a wide, almost unbroken plain. The fields are pale beneath the afternoon sun, and dry stalks whisper against one another whenever the wind crosses them. Chaff gathers in corners of the granaries, floating through shafts of light that enter beneath the eaves. Wooden walls smell of dust and old harvests, while sacks press against one another in orderly rows. A threshing machine trembles somewhere nearby, its rhythm traveling through the floorboards. Outside, wagon tracks divide the ground into parallel lines, and the air carries a faint sweetness from crushed grain. The sky seems larger than the buildings, yet the yards are enclosed by rails, gates, and watchtowers. District 9 is associated with grain production, and its harvest travels towards bakeries, barracks, factories, and official stores. You see grain weighed beneath government seals, its movement recorded before the first sack leaves the warehouse. The district's food connects it to every other district, but that connection does not give its workers greater freedom. Dependence works in both directions, while authority controls the terms of every exchange. A shortage in one place can be blamed upon theft, disobedience, or poor discipline, even when the wider system has directed supplies elsewhere. Punishment makes the accounting feel personal. You pass through a checkpoint where peacekeepers examine papers, inspect cargoes, and keep the gates closed between scheduled trains. The railway is efficient because it is regulated, and regulated because movement is never entirely free. Beyond the grain plains lies District 10, where livestock yards spread around low buildings and long fences. The smell of hay, leather, and warm animals rests heavily in the still air, while hoofprints mark the damp ground beside the pens. Cattle shift their weight behind wooden rails, and their breath appears briefly in the cool morning. A bell hangs from a gate, sounding softly when the metal moves. Straw clings to your boots, and rough boards carry the warmth of the previous day's sun. In the distance, a herd moves across a pasture beneath a sky washed almost white. The work is slow and physical, made of feeding, cleaning, lifting, counting, and waiting. Every sound seems close, from the low call of an animal to the creak of a cart. District 10 is associated with livestock, supplying meat, leather, animal power, and other materials required by the districts and the capital. You watch animals move through yards whose gates are marked with numbers rather than names. Workers remain near the danger of large animals, knives, vehicles, and disease, while the most valuable products are transported elsewhere. Their labor is necessary, yet its rewards are rarely returned in equal measure. The fences around the pastures resemble those around mines, fields, and harbors. They separate people from land, people from goods, and one district from the next. A railway guard records the destination of each shipment, and the train continues under rules that make the whole country dependent upon a single direction of movement. You reach District 8 at dusk, where factory walls stand close together and windows shine with the last dull light of the day. Behind the walls, the thud of looms continues through the evening, regular and heavy, like a second heartbeat beneath the streets. Threads move across frames in pale lines, and cloth hangs from rails in layered folds. The air contains cotton dust, machine oil, and the faint warmth of bodies working in crowded rooms. Outside, rain darkens the paving stones and gathers in shallow channels beside the curb. A single lamp trembles above a doorway, showing wet coats, tired faces, and bundles carried home. Factory windows remain bright after the surrounding houses have gone dark. Even at a distance, the machinery gives the district a steady pulse. District 8 is associated with textiles and manufacturing, producing clothing, uniforms, household fabric, and the countless finished goods required by an ordered society. You see raw materials arrive, become cloth, and leave as garments bearing the authority of another place. Manufacturing makes labor visible in the objects displayed across Panem, while the workers who made those objects remain almost invisible. Their hands disappear into seams, hems, labels, and official colors. The factories depend upon electricity from District 5, transport from District 6, timber from District 7, and materials carried along routes protected by peacekeepers. Specialization creates strength for the state and dependence for the people. A strike, an unauthorized sale, or an attempt to leave the district can therefore be treated as a threat to the entire arrangement. The walls contain both machinery and obedience. At night, the factory district settles only partially, because looms continue beneath the roofs and the railway continues beyond the guarded yards. District 6 surrounds you with roads, sidings, depots, and long platforms where transportation is treated as both industry and permission. The smell of grease and rainwater gathers beneath iron roofs, while wheels cool with faint metallic clicks after arriving from distant places. Crates are lifted from one carriage to another, and lamps cast narrow reflections across the rails. The station clock advances without hurry, marking departures that ordinary residents cannot simply choose. Wind moves through the open spaces between warehouses, carrying dust, oil, and the damp scent of sleepers. Signals change from red to green beyond the platform, yet every movement remains part of a schedule written elsewhere. A porter's footsteps fade along the boards, leaving the great yard quiet for a few moments. District 6 is associated with transportation, and its trains carry coal, grain, timber, fish, textiles, livestock, and electrical components towards the capital. You see the districts joined by rails, though the same rails prevent most people from traveling freely. Checkpoints, fences, armed peacekeepers, and regulated railway timetables turn distance into a controlled condition. A nearby district can feel unreachable when every bridge and station requires approval. Movement of goods is encouraged because the system needs materials, while movement of workers is restricted because people might carry ideas, grievances, or alliances. The capital therefore controls not only what travels, but also who may accompany it. Cargo crosses borders under seal, while families remain where the census has placed them. You stand beneath a station sign bearing the name of District 6, and the word district feels less like a region than a permitted compartment in a larger machine. The train carries you towards District 5, where turbines, lines, reservoirs, and power stations occupy the landscape with quiet, industrial grandeur. High cables extend across the fields, disappearing into distances softened by mist. Transformers hum behind metal fencing, and warning signs shine faintly beneath the rain. The ground vibrates beneath your feet whenever heavy machinery begins its cycle. Water moves through channels with restrained force, while steam drifts from pipes and dissolves against the cold air. At evening, small lamps appear one by one around the plant, their reflections trembling in dark pools. The smell is mineral and metallic, mixed with wet concrete and the clean sharpness of charged air. Beyond the barriers, the countryside remains almost silent. District 5 is associated with power generation, and its electricity allows factories, trains, broadcasts, mines, and official buildings to continue functioning. You see wires carry energy away, though the source of that energy remains guarded and distant. Power becomes ordinary at the point of use, appearing as light beneath a factory roof or heat within a government office. The labor and risk behind it are easier to overlook once the switch has been pressed. District 5 depends on coal from District 12, machinery transported through District 6, and workers who live close to turbines, furnaces, and electrical hazards. Each industry contains the others within it. The capital can therefore command the whole arrangement by controlling roads, schedules, permits, and armed enforcement. Dependence needs no constant explanation when every useful object reveals it. When darkness settles over District 5, the power station continues its low work, and distant towns remain illuminated by energy produced far from their homes. Near the center of Panem, District 1 displays its prosperity in polished windows, careful packaging, and objects made to signify importance. Light gathers on cut glass, bright metal, fine fabrics, and ornaments arranged behind guarded doors. The streets smell faintly of perfume, wax, and rain on stone. Shopfronts remain immaculate beneath the grey sky, and gloved attendants move quietly among shelves where nothing appears hurried. Velvet absorbs the sound of footsteps, while small lamps turn jewelry into points of pale fire. Crates arrive from distant districts, wrapped in timber and cloth, then emerge as gifts, decorations, and symbols of rank. Outside the commercial streets, wind moves through narrow alleys and carries the colder smells of coal, smoke, and wet pavement. District 1 is associated with luxury goods, and its products give the capital a language of refinement that conceals the industrial chain beneath it. You see beauty presented as though it had no mine, field, forest, quay, or factory behind it. The objects are made from materials gathered by workers who rarely encounter the finished forms in which their labor appears. Wealth becomes most powerful when it seems detached from effort. District 1 workshops still depend upon transport, electricity, textiles, timber, metals, and food from elsewhere. Luxury is therefore not independence, but a carefully displayed consequence of dependence. The polished surface of the district rests upon thousands of ordinary movements, each regulated by documents, schedules, and guarded routes. Even splendor follows a timetable. The capital receives these goods in a steady stream, and the stream itself becomes evidence that the districts remain obedient. District 2 occupies a harder landscape of stone yards, fortified buildings, training grounds, and workshops where masonry and weapons production meet. Dust lies in the seams of the paving, and the walls retain the cool smell of cut rock. Hammers strike blocks in measured intervals, producing a dense sound that seems to pass through the ground. Metal rests on racks beneath covered sheds, each piece cleaned and counted before leaving the yard. On the slopes above the town, peacekeepers move between barriers and watchtowers, their pale uniforms visible against the grey stone. Fires burn behind iron doors, giving the air a faint taste of smoke and heated metal. The district feels solid, guarded, and deliberately difficult to enter. District 2 is associated with masonry, weapons production, and the peacekeeper system that enforces order throughout Panem. You see stone become roads, fortresses, monuments, and official buildings, while metal becomes a means of protection and punishment. The peacekeepers can punish theft, hunting, unauthorized trade, and any movement judged to challenge the order imposed by the capital. Their authority reaches beyond the immediate act and into the memory of the surrounding community. District 2 supplies the structures and instruments through which obedience is maintained, yet it also depends upon food, energy, transport, and materials produced elsewhere. Its people are placed within the same interlocking economy, though their proximity to power gives the district a different position within it. Advantage does not remove dependence. You pass a training yard where weapons are handled as carefully as tools, and the distinction between labor and enforcement becomes difficult to see. The districts continue around you, each contributing a different necessity, and each receiving only a controlled portion of the value created through its work. The calendar makes these dependencies familiar by arranging them into a repeated sequence that touches every household. In District 12, the mine whistle marks the beginning of labor, and the reaping bell marks the beginning of another kind of accounting. Morning arrives with coal smoke caught in the winter air, while notices appear on walls and officials prepare the square. The same roads that carry coal towards the railway carry children towards the ceremony. Families stand beneath the watch of peacekeepers, their names entered into a system that has already decided the shape of the day. The bell sounds above the town, clear at first, then softened by distance and cold. Beyond the houses, the mine whistle rises and fades across a grey valley, bringing workers from one form of danger into another. Snow gathers along the fence posts, and the square smells of damp wool, iron, and old dust. The air seems to hold two kinds of silence at once. The annual calendar joins work, rationing, reaping, broadcast, and mourning into a political rhythm repeated until it feels older than memory. You move through the year by these signals, knowing when supplies will thin and when names will be drawn. The games make children represent their districts, transforming local identity into a visible contest while preventing the districts from acting together openly. Each child stands for a place that cannot stand beside another place. A district may mourn its own dead, but the ceremony directs that mourning into separate households, streets, and screens. Grief is permitted, though connection is carefully contained. The broadcast gathers every district into one shared event, yet the gathering occurs under the capital's image, language, and schedule. The country watches together without being allowed to meet. After the ceremony, work resumes, rations are counted, and the railway carries goods onward. Spectacle enters ordinary life and becomes one more date to endure. You travel once more along the routes connecting the districts, and the landscape now appears as a sequence of exchanges rather than separate scenes. Coal moves from District 12, grain from District 9, timber from District 7, fish from District 4, and textiles from District 8. Electricity from District 5 powers factories and stations, while District 6 transports materials towards the capital. District 10 supplies livestock, District 1 shapes luxury goods, and District 2 provides masonry, weapons, and peacekeepers. District 11 feeds the fields and orchards, while District 3 contributes technology and electronics. The train passes through rain, frost, smoke, and darkness, its lamps reflected in puddles beside the rails. Every carriage carries one part of a whole. District 3 is associated with technology and electronics, the quiet systems that make communication, surveillance, calculation, and broadcast possible. You see small components traveling in padded cases, their purpose hidden beneath labels and seals. Technology allows the capital to extend its presence beyond the places where its officials stand. A screen, signal, sensor, or control panel can make distant authority feel immediate. District 5 generates electricity, District 6 carries equipment, District 8 manufactures enclosures and cables, and District 2 protects the infrastructure. No district possesses the whole mechanism. This material dependence makes cooperation necessary, but the capital ensures that cooperation occurs through official channels rather than open solidarity. Need becomes a reason to obey. Workers who maintain these systems live beside their risks, while the benefits appear in places where the original labor is scarcely remembered. A soft electronic glow passes over the carriage window, and then the land returns to darkness, divided by fences and narrow paths. Fences follow rivers, fields, roads, and railway embankments, creating borders where natural geography once allowed movement to continue. Their wires glisten after rain, and warning signs stand at regular intervals beneath the open sky. In some places, the fence is low enough to see beyond it, which makes the barrier feel more deliberate rather than less. Grass bends against the posts, and leaves gather in the corners where the wire meets the ground. Peacekeepers patrol beside the lines, their footsteps pressed into mud that will later dry and harden. At night, lamps illuminate only short sections, leaving the rest to shadow. The air crosses the boundary freely, carrying smells from one district into another. The capital turns geography into controlled movement through checkpoints, fences, armed peacekeepers, and regulated railways. You can see neighboring land, but sight does not grant passage. The system's borders are not merely defensive structures. They are instructions written across the landscape. They teach you where a road ends, where a permit begins, and where curiosity becomes punishable. Hunting beyond an authorized area can be treated as theft, even when hunger has led you there. Trading without approval can be treated as sabotage, even when both parties lack necessities. Such punishments make the borders present inside the mind. A guard need not be visible at every crossing when the expected consequence has already entered daily calculation. The districts remain materially connected, but their inhabitants are kept politically apart. Goods move between them more freely than people do. At the next station, a peacekeeper checks the train once again, and the ordinary gesture carries the weight of the entire country. In factories and mines, at fields and quays, Labor remains close to danger while its rewards travel towards distant rooms. You stand beside a conveyor in District 8, then beside a shaft in District 12, and the same pattern follows you. Bodies are exposed to machinery, falling stone, drowning water, heavy animals, heat, dust, and exhaustion. The work leaves marks on hands, lungs, backs, and faces, while official accounts describe production in calm figures. In District 4, wet nets drip onto the quay. In District 7, sawdust settles beneath the trees. In District 11, soil darkens the palms. These textures belong to the workers, though the completed goods belong to the system. Rain taps against roofs that cannot keep every room dry. District residents often live close to dangerous workplaces while receiving little of the wealth created by their labor. You find the mine beside the houses, the factory beside the bedrooms, and the pasture beside the workers' rooms. The distance between production and reward is not accidental, because separation allows each district to understand hardship as local rather than national. A mine disaster belongs to one valley, and a factory injury belongs to one street. The games reinforce this separation by assigning children to represent districts as competitors rather than citizens within a shared political body. The children become symbols of division. Broadcast images can show every district at once, but the images arrive from the capital and return to the capital. Shared attention does not become shared power. The annual spectacle, therefore, joins the country emotionally while keeping it organizationally apart. People grieve together for a moment, then return to separate workplaces and restrictions. The system's endurance depends upon this movement from extraordinary violence back into ordinary routine. The mine whistle rises again over District 12, and its sound is joined by the bell used during the reaping. One summons workers beneath the earth, while the other summons families beneath the gaze of the state. The two sounds belong to the same political calendar because both organize bodies according to authority. Coal smoke gathers low between the houses, and frost turns the road edges white. A child carries a small parcel towards school, passing the fence where notices have been fixed in careful rows. The valley remains enclosed by hills, yet the railway gives coal a route beyond them. Somewhere in the distance, a locomotive answers the whistle with a muted horn. Daylight reaches the rooftops without warming them. District 12 returns you to the beginning of the cycle, where work and punishment are separated by ceremony but joined by the same structures. The mine whistle and the reaping bell remain different sounds within one calendar. The capital does not need to display violence each morning because the possibility of violence has been attached to work, movement, trade, hunger, and public gathering. You carry that possibility with you. A fence does not need to move when it has already taught you where not to walk. A peacekeeper does not need to speak when the uniform has already supplied the sentence. The games provide the spectacular reminder, while rationing, permits, schedules, and inspections provide the quieter continuation. Each part supports the others. The districts learn to obey through repetition, not through one decisive moment. The repeated act becomes familiar, and familiarity begins to resemble nature. Across Panem, the soundscape changes with each district, yet the political rhythm remains steady. The thud of looms behind factory walls becomes a background to ration lines and official notices. Wet nets and salt on a fishing quay accompany the counting of boats and the inspection of cargo. Sawdust beneath tall, dim trees lies beside posted restrictions on cutting and travel. Grain dust, animal breath, electrical hum, and coal smoke all enter the same governed year. Each place keeps its own texture, but none escapes the shared sequence of labor, scarcity, ceremony, broadcast, and mourning. Evening settles over the railways, and signal lamps shine through mist like small, controlled stars. The country grows quiet without becoming free. You pass from district to district carrying no authority of your own, yet every place has been made legible through its principal industry. Coal names District 12, Fields name District 11, Fish name District 4, and Timber names District 7. Textiles belong to District 8, Grain to District 9, Livestock to District 10, Technology to District 3, and Power to District 5. Transportation belongs to District 6, Luxury Goods to District 1, and Masonry with Weapons to District 2. These associations help the capital organize production and help the population understand its assigned role. Identity becomes useful because it can be measured, displayed, and controlled. The districts are materially dependent on one another and on the capital, whose railways, permits, broadcasts, and armed forces hold the arrangement together. Labor is made visible in the goods moving through stations, while power remains invisible in the authority deciding where those goods may go. You return to District 12 beneath the late winter sky, and the mine whistle fades across a grey valley for the last time on this journey. Coal smoke hangs in the air, thin as gauze, while the houses settle into evening. The streets are marked by footprints, cart wheels, and the dark edges of melting snow. A small fire burns behind one window, and its warmth does not reach the road. Beyond the rooftops, the fence follows the curve of the land, shining faintly where moonlight touches its wire. No one stands at every post, yet the boundary remains understood. The mine buildings are quiet now, though the stone retains the day's cold. In the distance, a train passes through the valley, carrying another load beyond sight. The central achievement of the system is not that fear appears every day, but that the possibility of punishment has been built into daily life. You find it in the checkpoint, the ration book, the fence, the timetable, and the official bell. Spectacular violence preserves the memory of obedience, while ordinary repetition preserves its practice. The two forms of control require one another. The capital's power rests upon the knowledge that every district needs the others, and that every district can be isolated from them. Dependence joins the country economically, while authority divides it politically. The annual calendar renews the arrangement whenever work begins. Supplies are counted, names are drawn, images are broadcast, and mourning is returned to separate homes. You remain among the houses of District 12 as the lights grow fewer, listening to faint machinery beyond the valley. The mine whistle is gone, but its meaning remains. Fear no longer needs to arrive as a sudden sound, because it has become part of the silence between ordinary sounds. It waits in the railway gate, the guarded road, the empty place at the table, and the name recorded on the page. The country sleeps within its districts, and each district sleeps within its assigned labor. Coal smoke cools in the winter air, fences hold their lines, and the possibility of punishment continues quietly through the night.